Chapter 187. Yen Zhaoge's sword light locked down, that thread of blood that was about to be retracted back into the black fog. This way, the threads of blood would not dissipate, as Yen Zhaoge would be able to follow them and directly arrive at the core of the formation, no longer having to waste his energy in continuing to deduce and search for them. Yen Zhaoge let out a slight sigh of relief before picking up the pair of gloves that Shui Wuya had left on the ground after his death. The originally blood-red gloves gradually faded, revealing their original black color. Yen Zhaoge was slightly interested. A high-grade artifact, in that instant just now, actually possessed the power close to that of a low-grade spirit artifact, although it's only temporary and requires a long time to recover. It's quite an interesting technique. For a martial artist like Shui Wuya, who was almost a lone wolf, even if he joined the Decimating Abyss as a grandmaster, it would still be very difficult for him to obtain a spirit weapon. You can't underestimate the intelligence of others. After the Great Calamity, capable people have also appeared, having come up with quite a few techniques of a certain standard. Yen Zhaoge kept his gloves. When I have the time later, I'll have to study them a bit. He raised his head to look in the direction of the bloodline and narrowed his eyes slightly. Let's deal with the big thing in front of us first. As Yen Zhaoge followed the bloodlines, red lights that resembled bolts of lightning could be seen flickering within the black fog before him from time to time. The ground beneath his feet began to undulate like waves. Lowering his head, he could see countless complicated runes and runes shuttling back and forth like flowing water. As Zhangxian got closer to the core of the formation runes here became even more complicated, interweaving with one another. A powerful aura pulsed, vibrating nonstop, the terrifying aura that could confuse one's mind and cause one to feel fear and confusion was getting stronger and stronger. It was as if it had taken physical form and was drilling into every pore on the surface of one's body. It was suffocating. As Yen Zhaoge retracted his aura and proceeded onwards, he suddenly felt his heart palpitate. The entire demonic realm seemed to be trembling. That terrifying aura suddenly surged. Yen Zhaoge's gaze turned cold. This is the dimensional barrier between the 9 underworlds and the 8 extremities world. It is growing weaker and weaker, the gap indistinctly visible as a passageway will soon truly be ripped open, even though they were in the infernal domain. However, Yen Zhaoge could feel that both within and outside the devilish domain, the battle between the sacred grounds and the decimating abyss martial practitioners was also growing more intense. The door of the 9 underworlds was about to open. Other than Turbid Wave Pavilion, the experts of the other sacred grounds had also come to assist, and the decimating abyss martial practitioners gradually found it hard to resist. But as the aura of the 9 nether grew stronger and stronger, all the martial artists who fell to the dark side also faintly had the momentum of rising with the tide, especially when Yen Zhaoge could clearly feel the devilish formation at the bottom of this clear, concealed lake. After connecting with the power of the 9 underworlds, his strength began to grow stronger and stronger. Not only did it distort space and time to open the door to the 9 underworlds when this demonic formation operated, it even began to turn from defense to offense, helping the decimating abyss martial artists suppress the experts of the various holy lands. Raising his head to look at the all-encompassing black fog, Yen Zhaoge muttered to himself, "The backup plan has indeed failed as well, having to fight head-on. Turbid Wave Pavilion, Lord's reaction shouldn't be slow, right? The 6 great holy lands of the current era, Broad Creed Mountain and Infinite Boundless Mountain, had sacred artifacts, but no martial saints. The other 4 clans each had a martial saint sitting over them. The number 1 expert of Turbid Wave Pavilion, the current Pavilion Lord, the Roiling Cloud Martial Saint. Turbid Wave Roiling Clouds and Qinglin was also the only female martial saint of the current Eight Extremities world, the #1 female expert of the current era. Although they were strictly neutral and did not easily interfere with foreign affairs, Turbid Wave Pavilion guarded the lake region's territory like an iron bucket. It would also be very hard for other clans to easily intervene. Only the 9 underworld's evil devils with their formless corrosive power could barely penetrate through. However, with such a major incident occurring in the territory of the lake domain, it was impossible for Qinglin to just sit back and watch. While they were separated by a great distance of 5,000 kilometers, with the speed of a martial saint, exiting seclusion at Turbid Wave Pavilion and rushing over here, it wouldn't take too long. The only thing that Yan Zhaoge was worried about was that since the enemy knew their plans like the back of their hands, they should also have a plan to deal with any subsequent changes. Whether the decimating Abyss organization had a martial saint, or whether they had an expert who, boosted by the power of the devilish domain, was something that Yan Zhaoge didn't know. However, he knew that if the enemy had planned ahead of time, drawing the flame devils on the East Sea to make use of the chance to cause trouble, forming a pincer attack from both sides, let alone in Qinglin, even the Lord of Jade Sea City, the Jade Sea Martial Saint Song Wuliang, would probably have to keep a close eye on the East Sea, not having the time to rush over. That's why I say that having a traitor is really a headache-inducing thing. Rubbing his temples, Yan Zhaoge sighed, continuing forward. Following the line of blood, Yan Zhaoge saw that amidst the black fog before him, a light actually vaguely began to appear. The further he went, the more piercing the light became, the blood-red everything appearing terrifying and mournful. As Yan Zhaoge passed through the black fog, the scene before him instantly changed. Enveloped by a red light, the vast region was completely empty, with only a structure that resembled a tall tower standing in the very center. That tall tower was completely golden, yet emitted a blood-red glow. Countless spirit patterns that flickered with black light converged from all directions, concentrating on that tall tower. The black spirit patterns resembled numerous black chains, tightly entangling the tall tower. Looking over, Yan Zhaoge discovered that this tall golden tower, rising from the ground, seemed to still be gradually increasing in height. The ground beneath the tall tower roiled unceasingly, as though it had a life of its own. The soil unceasingly clustered around the tall tower, adding to its height as it rose unceasingly. At the top of the tall golden tower, streams of red light flickered, vaguely seeming to form a door. This red door of light was projected onto the ground in front of the tall tower. What Yan Zhaoge noticed was that the red door of light in the air was currently trembling unceasingly, shuddering as though it might open at any moment. And on the ground in front of the tall tower, the projection of the red door of light was also trembling unceasingly. The crevice between the two doors was distorting unceasingly, causing the ground to also distort intensely. It was as though something was about to drill out from the ground, ripping a massive deep abyss in the ground. Yan Zhaoge's expression turned somewhat solemn. The red door of light above the tall tower was the result of a formation, while the projection on the ground was the true Great Nine Underworld's door that was about to open. If that crevice really opened, transforming into something that truly existed, the deep abyss down below would not lead to the underground of this Eight Extremities world, nor would it lead to the soil and rocks at the bottom of Clear Concealed Lake. Instead, it would be that legendary 9 underworlds. Just from the appearance of this door, one could tell that it was already about to open. Yan Zhaoge's gaze flickered as he saw that near that distorted red door of light on the ground, there were shockingly still a few people there. One of them was precisely the Lu Shengfeng, who had previously been defeated by Yan Zhaoge. At this moment, his pupils were yellow, his gaze emitting a red light. He had clearly already fallen to the dark side. Beside Lu Shengfeng were two other martial practitioners, similar to Lu Shengfeng in their somewhat psychotic, savage smiles. They were similarly fallen practitioners. In front of the three of them, there were 5 people lying paralyzed on the ground, unable to move. Yan Zhaoge's gaze swept over them. They were actually all people he knew. Yi Zhongzhou, Wan Ping, Li Jingwan, Xiao Yu, Zhang Yao. To be continued. Chapter 188. Qi. Lu Shengfeng extended a finger and jabbed out. A bloody hole instantly appeared on Yi Zhongzhou's arm. Yi Zhongzhou clenched his teeth, not uttering a sound as he glared furiously at Lu Shengfeng. Lu Shengfeng smiled slightly. What a tough guy! Saying thus, he tapped out lightly with his finger once more. Heavily injured, Yi Zhongzhou was hard-pressed to evade as he could only watch as yet another bloody hole appeared on his arm. Lu Shengfeng laughed somewhat crazily. I love torturing tough guys the most because they are usually able to last longer, allowing me to play with them a few more times. Yi Zhongzhou let out a muffled groan. Madman! He glared at Lu Shengfeng. You torture me, wanting me to be enraged or despairing, wanting me to hate you, wanting me to fall to the dark side like you? Stop daydreaming. I am indeed enraged, indeed wishing that I could kill a madman like you. But I definitely won't let these thoughts consume me, becoming a devil like you. Lu Shengfeng said, nonchalantly, it's you who should stop daydreaming. You are not my match in the first place. And now that you are heavily injured, how can you kill me? A somewhat mischievous smile hung on his face. If you fall to the dark side, your strength will rise even further, and breaking through to the late Xiantian stage might not be impossible. Only then will you have the capital to battle me. Also, at the same time as you fall to the dark side, you will obtain a chance in which your injuries will completely recover. Look at me. I was previously beaten by Yan Zhaoge to the point that my divine, mountain tyrannical body was broken, and at the same time, my injuries were so severe that I was virtually unable to get up. Under such circumstances, transforming into a devil, cleansing my body with devilish qi, and reconstructing myself, my injuries will immediately recover. Fighting the 5 of you alone will be very easy. As Lu Shengfeng smiled, he extended a finger once more, his aura qi penetrating Yi Zhongzhou's arm once more. I have good intentions. I'm giving you a chance to rise again. Cold sweat dripped down Yi Zhongzhou's forehead as he clenched his teeth, ignoring Lu Shengfeng's bewitchment. Lu Shengfeng was also not in a hurry as he looked smilingly at Wan Ping by the side, junior brother Wan of Turbid Wave Pavilion. I am extremely grateful for your hospitality over the past few days and ought to return some gifts. As he spoke, he jabbed his finger down. A bloody hole also appeared on Wan Ping's arm. Wan Ping grunted and turned his head to the side, refusing to answer Lu Shengfeng. Lu Shengfeng was not in a hurry. He said with a smile, actually, if the 2 of you were to fall to the dark side and join forces, you might be able to fight me. Won't you consider it? Beside him, the other 2 fallen evils watched this scene with amusement. Wan Ping remained silent. Yi Zhongzhou sneered. Dream on. Lu Shengfeng looked at Yi Zhongzhou and then at Wan Ping, a cold and mocking smile appearing at the corners of his mouth. He stood up, moved his feet, and said nonchalantly, forget it, it doesn't matter. I'm not a person who likes to force others. As he spoke, he moved to Li Jingwan and Zhang Yao's side. Yi Zhongzhou's expression changed. Lu Shengfeng, what are you doing? Lu Shengfeng grinned and said, it's nothing. Greet the 2 young junior sisters and get to know each other. He smiled as he squatted down before Li Jingwan and Zhang Yao. The 2 girls were still able to maintain their composure, but Li Jingwan pursed her lips tightly. Zhang Yao clenched her teeth, closing her eyes. Lu Shengfeng, looked rather interestedly at the two girls, his gaze first landing on Li Jingwan before he tapped out with a finger. A bloody hole instantly appeared on Li Jingwan's shoulder. The Jade Sea City female disciple groaned in pain, but her gaze was still fearless. She seemed rather unyielding. Li Jingwan glared angrily at Lu Shengfeng before she abruptly closed her eyes, an unnatural flush surfacing on her face. A powerful orochi suddenly erupted from her heavily injured body, activating the heaven-surging tide. Under such circumstances, are you trying to end your own life? Lu Shengfeng was rather taken aback before he chuckled, swiftly pressing down with a palm, dispersing the orochi that Li Jingwan had gathered. Sadly, the gap between our strength is too great, and you are also heavily injured. In front of me now, it would be hard for you to die even if you wanted to. Li Jingwan opened her eyes, glaring furiously at Lu Shengfeng. Lu Shengfeng came before her, smiling. After falling to the dark side and recovering from your injuries, if you had immediately committed suicide at that time, I might not have been able to stop you in time. Li Jingwan glared furiously at Lu Shengfeng for a while before she closed her eyes once more, still not saying a word. The smile on Lu Shengfeng's face vanished. Junior sister, Li might not understand me too well. I am a person who is more afraid of death. Therefore, towards those people who view death as a return home, I am especially, not in admiration, but in disgust. Saying thus, Lu Shengfeng tapped out with a finger, a mist of blood instantly erupting from one of Li Jingwan's legs, the pain causing the young girl's face to be pale as paper. Therefore, I like to concoct those people who are not afraid of death the most. I have countless ways to make them feel even worse than death, letting them know that not being afraid of death is actually not that much of a big deal. Swiveling his head to look at Zhang Yao, Lu Shengfeng bared his teeth in a smile. Turbid Wave Pavilion's junior sister Zhang, we meet again. Zhang Yao shut her eyes tightly, not speaking, as Lu Shengfeng smiled. Speaking of this, I have really let junior sister Zhang see a joke. Earlier, when clashing with that Yan Zhaoga, I lost to him, losing in a rather ugly manner. Lu Shengfeng lightly tapped Zhang Yao's shoulder, his power condensed without being released. Of the few of you, I actually hope that the one I want to greet the most is you. After all, it would be a little awkward for the two of us to meet. Zhang Yao's body trembled slightly. As Lu Shengfeng continued, I have always been thinking about how to get rid of this awkwardness, but after thinking for a long time, I still couldn't think of anything. In the end, I still decided that it would be better for us to never meet again. If you want to say goodbye forever, naturally only being separated by life and death would be the safest. As for me, I am afraid of death, and also don't want to die. Therefore, I can only ask you to die. Qi. Zhang Yao's shoulder was pierced through by the force of Lu Shengfeng's finger as she let out a tragic cry. Lu Shengfeng said leisurely, however, before you die, you can still accompany me to have some fun. Zhang Yao hissed, just kill me. Lu Shengfeng shook his head, smiling, I will, but when it will be, is up to me. Yi Zhongzhou glared angrily at Lu Shengfeng. Lu Shengfeng looked back at him, smiling, you want to save them? Sadly, you don't have that ability. Fall to the dark side, and give it a try. At least, there will be some chance. However, you won't be able to do it alone. Only together with that junior brother, Wan, will there be a chance of success. You. Veins popped out on Yi Zhongzhou's neck as he panted heavily, staring fixedly at Lu Shengfeng. By the side, Wan Ping still had his eyes closed and did not speak. Senior brother Lu, calm down. If there are any problems, everyone can speak openly. It's fine as long as they are spoken openly. There's nothing that can't be resolved through communication. Xiaoyu said, hurriedly, you shut up. Lu Shengfeng said coldly, The reason I put you last is not because you are my fellow disciple, but because you are the one I want to kill the most, the one I hate the most. As Lu Shengfeng said this, he directly pointed a finger at Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu let out a tragic cry as a bloody hole appeared on his abdomen, fresh blood flowing out. Say something, and I'll give it to you, Lu Shengfeng said with a cold smile. Now, as you wish, let's talk. Lu Shengfeng came before Xiao Yu, grinning. Right, we are fellow disciples, so I ought to give you some preferential treatment. After saying that, he pointed his finger again, and another bloody hole appeared on Xiao Yu's body. You say one sentence, and I'll give you two. Chapter 189. Lu Shengfeng lowered his head to look at Xiao Yu, saying indifferently, You're stronger than me, I can only listen when you speak. You're so weak, yet you're still chattering all day, spouting a bunch of nonsense. Who has the patience to listen to your nonsense? Xiao Yu forcefully endured the intense pain, looking in another direction. Junior apprentice brother Zhao, persuade senior apprentice brother Lu. In the distance, behind the golden tower, a figure walked out, his gaze cold and unyielding. It was Zhao Hao. Zhao Hao's expression was as per usual, his eyes bright and calm. Your wills are strong enough, no one can force you to fall to the dark side. At most, it's just death. If you want to drag out an ignoble existence, why care if you're a human or a devil? But if I were you, rather than being a fish on a chopping board waiting to be slaughtered, I might as well become a devil, obtain power, and fight with my life on the line. Yi Zhongzhou and the others all looked at him in shock. Xiao Yu's mouth agape. Even junior apprentice brother Zhao is willing to become a devil, but you clearly haven't fallen to the dark side. Zhao Hao said disdainfully, To you, becoming a devil is just magnifying a certain thought in your heart. What you didn't dare to do in the past, you now have the guts to do. And there's nothing I don't dare to do. What I want to do, I'll do it, live freely, and do as I please. To me, there's no difference between a human or a devil. I don't care if others are humans or devils. To me, it's all the same. Those who block my path, I'll kill them. There's no difference between humans and devils. Zhao Hao sneered, his expression full of contempt. The most dangerous and poisonous is the human heart. Devils are born from the heart, and as long as life exists, devils will never be extinguished. You fear evil devils, but it's actually just fear the deepest thoughts in your heart. But to me, I've never minded following the true thoughts in my heart, but I won't lose control either. What I seek is freedom, to be unfettered, to be free and unfettered. To me, in this world, only power is real. Everything else is but an illusion. Old man Mo treats me pretty well, so I owe him a favor, even though I have no interest in becoming like him, or help him make the 9 underworlds descend, but I won't deliberately ruin his plans. Zhao Hao looked disdainfully at Yi Zhongzhou, Xiao Yu, and the rest. Therefore, I do not care about evil devils because I can control my own mental state. Unlike trash like you, daring to think, but not daring to admit it, still cowering and hiding. Yi Zhongzhou did not care that Lu Shengfeng and the others were right beside him, as he could not help but let loose a torrent of abuse, a bunch of nonsense. He's just a selfish, cold, and detached person. Zhao Hao was surprised. Trash like you, what right do you have to criticize me? When these words were spoken, Yi Zhongzhou and the others could not help but be stunned, and even Lu Shengfeng cast a sidelong glance. Zhao Hao's gaze swept past Yi Zhongzhou and Wan Ping, snorting lightly, You're not young anymore, yet you're only a mid-Xiantian martial scholar. You've lived your life like a dog. Yi Zhongzhou was instantly angered to the point of laughing. You are merely at the late inner aura stage, yet you say that I am merely at the mid-Xiantian stage. Zhao Hao smiled disdainfully. What cultivation level did you have when you were my age? Is he taller than me? If he isn't, do you have the face to speak to me? Yi Zhongzhou's eyes widened, glaring furiously at him. You bastard, if not for my current injuries, I would definitely teach you a lesson. Wan Ping also opened his eyes at this time, glaring furiously at Zhao Hao. Lu Shengfeng seemed to be smiling, yet not. His gaze shifted between Zhao Hao, Yi Zhongzhou, Wan Ping, and the others. The two beside him looked at Zhao Hao, their expressions also rather awkward and unfriendly. But Lu Shengfeng waved his hands, gesturing for them to keep quiet. Zhao Hao also ignored the expressions of Lu Shengfeng and the others, casting a sidelong glance at Yi Zhongzhou. By the way, I wasn't even a martial scholar a year ago. Now, I'm a late inner aura martial scholar. Back then, how much time did you take to go from a body refiner to a late inner aura martial scholar? Faster than me? If not faster than me, then what are you if not trash? How much has your cultivation increased in a year? You're already so old, yet you're only a mid-Xiantian martial scholar. If your age wasn't eaten by a dog, then where did you live? Teach me a lesson? Let's not compete in cultivation speed, but in strength at the same cultivation level. At the same cultivation level, I can easily take on 3 to 5 of you. Teach me a lesson? Zhao Hao looked somewhat pitifully at Yi Zhongzhou. Actually, it might be better for you to die today. Otherwise, you'll see very soon in the future that I'll surpass you in cultivation level before long, crushing you like an ant at the same time. Yi Zhongzhou pushed upwards with a single breath, but was unable to move due to his heavy injuries. His eyes instantly turned red in anger. Xiaoyu looked at Zhao Hao in shock. Junior brother Zhao, aren't your words a little too hurtful? Zhao Hao glanced at him, saying disdainfully, the most trash is you. You don't know how to do anything, only knowing how to blabber endlessly. A person like you, if not for your master protecting you, you would have long since died 100 times over. I look down on people like you the most. Your talent is clearly not bad, but you don't know how to cherish it, wasting it for nothing. You're worse than trash. As he spoke, at the top of the golden tower, the projection of the red door of light on the ground became more and more distorted. Meanwhile, the power contained within also became more and more terrifying. A strange, tyrannical aura emanated, causing the originally already heavily injured Yi Zhongzhou, Zhang Yao, and the others to feel even more unbearable. The black chains entangling the golden tower shook unceasingly. The world of red light that they were in was also shaking unceasingly. Outside of the domain of red light, black fog roiled as many powerful spiritual lights intersected with the fist intents of martial practitioners. The opening of the Great Nine Underworld's door had already reached its final, crucial moment. Meanwhile, the attacks and defenses of the numerous experts outside had also reached the point where it was either you or I who lived. The defensive line of the decimating Abyss Organization's experts had already gradually been pressured to the vicinity of the core of the formation. However, accompanied by the terrifying aura within the Great Nine Underworld's door growing stronger and stronger, the decimating Abyss Organization's experts grew braver as they fought, actually beginning to drive the experts of the various sacred grounds out once more. Zhao Hao glanced disdainfully at Xiaoyu, Yi Zhongzhou, and the others before turning and walking back towards the Golden Tower, saying casually, "If you find Yin Zhaoge, remember to let me know." Lu Shengfeng laughed. "You want to find Yin Zhaoge?" Zhao Hao said, "Yin Zhaoge is finally different from these trash. However, I will let him know that the two of us are also different. Looking for me?" A voice suddenly resounded by their ears. Lu Shengfeng, Zhao Hao, and the others all turned to look, seeing Yin Zhaoge looking at them from a distance away. Yin Zhaoge, however, did not look at Lu Shengfeng and Zhao Hao, instead looking solemnly and apologetically at Yi Zhongzhou and the others. "Everyone, I'm sorry. Some things require time to prepare, and I've made you suffer. I guarantee that later. I will give you the chance to personally repay Lu Shengfeng 100-fold. Chapter 190. Yen Zhaoge gazed at that towering golden pagoda, as well as the red door projected down below. The door of the 9 underworlds was about to open. After the initial shock, Lu Shengfeng let out a strange laugh. Pay me back 100 times? Who do you think you are? That's right. Even if I've been reborn and my strength has increased, I might still not be a match for you. But so what? There was a hint of madness in Lu Shengfeng's smile. The 9 underworlds will descend. This place will become our paradise. Do you think you can stop it? There are so many great grandmasters out there who can't do it. Do you think you can do it? That's right. You did sneak in. But what can you do as a mere guru? Lu Shengfeng grinned as he turned to the side, making a gesture of courtesy towards Yen Zhaoge, indicating for him to head towards the Golden Tower. We'll make way for you and let you attack the core of the formation. With your cultivation, you won't be able to destroy such a large formation. It's like an ant trying to shake a tree. Yen Zhaoge's expression was calm. Indeed, with my cultivation base, I would indeed be unable to do it. The descent of the 9 underworlds is indeed something that must be stopped. Otherwise, even if I save senior brother Yi, junior sister Zhang, and the others, the end result will be that everyone will die together. So, why do you think I didn't beat you into a pig's head and save senior brother Yi, and the others just now? What did you think I was preparing for? As Yen Zhaoge spoke, the roiling sound of thunder suddenly resounded by everyone's ears. Amidst the rumbling, a purple pearl slowly rose up like a purple sun appearing in the blood-red world. It was the fragment of the eye of the Thunder Emperor. Berserk lightning that gave off a destructive pressure surged out from within. Purple lightning, snakes twisted in the air. Yen Zhaoge lightly tapped forward with his finger at an extremely slow speed. His fingertips felt like they were carrying a heavy burden, carrying an infinite weight. The purple orb formed from the fragment of the eye of the Thunder Emperor emitted a humming sound before transforming into purple lightning. It crashed towards the Golden Tower. The purple lightning clashed with the Golden Tower. A crack visible to the naked eye immediately appeared on the tower, extending from the top all the way to the bottom. The black runes that wrapped around the Golden Tower trembled nonstop. A large number of fractures. Even the red door of light at the top of the Golden Tower began to tremble, its surface rippling like water. However, the Golden Tower did not completely shatter. The projection of the red light door on the ground was still there. The terrifying aura became stronger and stronger, and the door of the 9 serenities was still about to open. The core of the formation was under attack, and the formation itself was constantly operating, dissipating the power, and the formation was also changing. The red canopy above their heads split open. The rolling black fog was churning. Amidst the devilish chi that surged to the heavens, 2 streaks of spiritual light shot into the skies as 2 lofty mountain peaks, one black and one red, now appeared before the eyes of Yen Zhaoge and the others. Taking a closer look, the 2 mountains seemed to be thousands of zhang tall. Floating in the sky, they exerted a tremendous pressure. Numerous enormous spirit talismans, each about an acre in circumference, gathered together and formed a huge spirit formation. Then, the 2 sky-propping divine mountains collided with each other. The berserk aura tore apart the surrounding fiend domain heaven and earth. That black divine mountain, it clearly held the upper hand. A loud laughter resounded within the sky. Shan Sherwing, you were originally not my match. Here, you are even less so. This laughter was precisely the voice of that infinite, boundless mountain's elder Mo originally. He should have been surrounded and captured at the very first moment, but now he was majestic and awe-inspiring. Suppressing Shan Sherwing, His loud laughter resounded, deafening to the ears. "This is what you're relying on? Child of the Yen family, son of the heavenly thunder hall's Lin Tianfeng, spreading the news of you obtaining a sacred artifact fragment to the entire world. How could we not know about it? But so what? You are a mere martial scholar at the end of the day. Even if it's a fragment of a sacred artifact, it is still the foundation of a sacred artifact. How much of its power can you wield? This old man's luck is not bad, just happening to be nearby. This sacred artifact fragment, this old man will kindly accept it. I have to thank you for giving this old man such a treasure." The black divine mountain seemed to grow even taller, directly suppressing the red divine mountain. Cracks even began to appear on the surface of the red divine mountain. Elder Emo laughed coldly, still wet behind the ears brat, relying on some talent, not knowing the immensity of the heavens and the earth. "You must know that geniuses like you are the easiest to die prematurely. Still want to exchange blows with this old man? Sure, this old man will satisfy you today. After the 9 underworlds descend, this old man will slowly deal with you." On the ground, Zhao Hao said expressionlessly, "Leave him to me. If I don't personally kill him, my heart won't be at ease. My thoughts won't be smooth." Elder Emo laughed loudly. "Let's see if his life is that tough, whether he can survive under this old man's hands." While cracks had been left on that tall golden tower by the eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment, the fragment was also embedded within, being sucked in by the tall golden tower. Numerous streaks of blood-red light flickered. The tall golden tower actually resembled a living being as it attempted to devour the eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment. Looking at Yen Zhaoge, Lu Shengfeng chuckled. "What are you still spacing out for? Hurry up and save your treasure? If you save this treasure of yours, then immediately run away with your tail between your legs. You might be able to escape with your life. As for my side, you don't have to worry about it." Lu Shengfeng grinned as he walked towards Yi Zhongzhou and the others. "Let them take revenge with their own hands, taking revenge on me 1,000 times over. There is no longer any hope of that. You'd better hope that you can survive, taking revenge for them in the future. But you know that I'm afraid of death. I'll definitely hide well." Yi Zhongzhou, Zhang Yao, and the others watched the eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment being trapped by the tall golden tower, feeling the terrifying aura within the great 9 underworld's door growing more and more dense and real. At this moment, a feeling of despair finally arose within their hearts. Glaring furiously at Lu Shengfeng, Zhang Yao yelled loudly, "Only knowing how to bully the weak, a coward who bullies the weak and fears the strong. Back when you were beaten into a pile of mud by senior apprentice brother, Yen, wagging your tail and begging for mercy, not even comparable to a dog. What a joke." Lu Shengfeng chuckled, "Wanting to anger me into killing you. You'd have to do it quickly? How could it be so easy? Right, I'm just bullying the weak, and fearing the strong. Before experts, I'm the most obedient little dog. Before weaklings like you, junior apprentice Sister Zhang, I'm your most terrifying nightmare." Lu Shengfeng came before Zhang Yao, pinching her cheek, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Little girl, now this pile of mud of mine is going to be smeared all over your face. Are you prepared?" "Move your hand away." Yen Zhaoge's voice suddenly resounded by Lu Shengfeng's ear. Lu Shengfeng frowned. He suddenly discovered that Yen Zhaoge's tone was very calm, not having the slightest hint of a sense of defeat. Yen Zhaoge's gaze swept past Lu Shengfeng's trio as well as Zhao Hao, looking at Yi Zhongzhou, Zhang Yao, and the others lying on the ground. He suddenly laughed. "I'm not targeting anyone. I just want to say—" Yen Zhaoge's gaze turned cold. "All of you, as long as you're still standing, you're all trash." Chapter 191. Before Yen Zhaoge's words had landed, that fragment of the eye of the Thunder Emperor, which seemed to have been trapped within the golden tower, suddenly flickered intensely. Along with this flash, the golden tower suddenly trembled. As the golden pagoda shook, the entire array seemed to shake as well. The red door projection on the ground shook violently, and time seemed to freeze at this moment. The boundlessly terrifying and intimidating aura of the netherworld seemed to have weakened slightly at this moment. In the sky, Elder Mo's furious roar rang out from the black divine mountain. All the fallen evils in the infernal domain were affected by the feedback of the 9 underworlds, and their minds were shaken, causing them to fall into a momentary daze. At the same time, Yen Zhaoga's figure flickered, already disappearing from the spot. As it rose and fell, a beam of green light suddenly lit up. A long rainbow pierced through the sky, instantly piercing through space and slashing straight in front of Lu Shengfeng. After a momentary daze, Lu Shengfeng came back to his senses and almost subconsciously increased his strength to crush Zhang Yao's skull. However, to a martial practitioner like Yen Zhaoga, this instant of time was already long enough. With a flash of green light, blood splattered everywhere. Lu Shengfeng let out a muffled groan. The arm with which he had been pinching Zhang Yao's face had already been chopped off by Yen Zhaoga's sword. The 2 fallen evils beside him also came to their senses at this moment. Ignoring Lu Shengfeng, they raised their hands in unison. 2 ropes flew out with runes, and runes appearing on them. In an instant, a powerful light lit up, transforming into a sphere of light, wanting to lock Yen Zhaoga within. Not even looking at it, Yen Zhaoga flipped his left hand, a glass vessel appearing within which a blood-red light flickered. After breaking Lin Zhou's blood cocoon web last time, Yen Zhaoga forged yet another blood devil plate. The blood-red light shot out and instantly broke the sphere of light. The 2 fallen evils furrowed their brows. The strength of their barrier was due to the infernal domain's geographical advantage. It was enough to trap a reaching heaven state guru for a period of time, and even a great grandmaster for a few breaths, who knew that Yen Zhaoga would actually immediately break through, not obstructing him in the slightest. Both of them were experts in combat. Since their first strike had missed, they did not hesitate. He immediately launched his second attack. One of them let out a low roar, kicking straight at Yen Zhaoga. As he kicked out, his aura chi immediately transformed into an illusory heaven and earth, boundless tides sweeping towards Yen Zhaoga. This martial practitioner's legs struck out consecutively, resembling an unceasing tsunami, each higher than the previous as it slammed madly towards Yen Zhaoga. Yen Zhaoga was about to face the enemy when the other fallen practitioner formed a ring with his hands. A large amount of stellar energy gathered between his hands and burst forth with blinding light. The aura chi of this person's entire body gathered together, forming a massive ball of light before he pushed it out with his hands, blasting towards Yen Zhaoga from another direction. The massive ball of light not only enveloped Yen Zhaoga, it also swept along the collapsed Yi Zhongzhou, Zhang Yao, and the others. If Yen Zhaoga didn't handle this carefully, Yi Zhongzhou and the others would immediately be caught in the crossfire. If he helped Yi Zhongzhou and the others to defend against the other opponent's attack, he would not be able to do so. He wanted to pose a threat to Yen Zhaoga. Yi Zhongzhou and the others stared wide-eyed. If they were in their shoes, it would be difficult for them to deal with such a dangerous situation. What will he do? Wan Ping's heart tightened. Zhang Yao's lips unconsciously opened. Senior apprentice brother, Yi Zhongzhou clenched his fists. Don't worry about us. At a time like this, you have to prioritize your own safety. Lu Shengfeng's gaze was savage. Clutching the wound of his severed arm, a black jade pendant hanging by his waist now flew up, transforming into a streak of light as it connected to his severed arm. Yen Zhaoga! Lu Shengfeng howled madly. At the wound of his severed arm, The black light actually temporarily condensed into a brand new arm. His entire body's aura chi congregated before he struck out simultaneously with both palms, striking towards Yan Zhaoge, knowing that Yan Zhaoge had quite a few spirit artifacts on him. In order to prevent Yan Zhaoge from relying on spirit artifacts to forcibly resist their attacks, Lu Shengfeng and the others simultaneously opened their mouths and roared loudly. As they opened their mouths, they each spat out a streak of dark light, forming a ring in midair. The ring was not a spirit artifact, but a unique treasure. As the dark light flickered, Yan Zhaoge temporarily lost his connection with the spirit artifact. Seeing this, Yan Zhaoge was not flustered or hurried in the slightest. His gaze calm as his body abruptly shook, a hand extending outwards, resembling an illusory shadow. The 12-winged heavenly snake king that resided within the sea of stars, swallowing a true dragon, seemed to have reappeared within this world. Yan Zhaoge grabbed out, breaking through the waves of the sea, grabbing the other party's right leg. Not waiting for that fallen practitioner to make his next move, Yan Zhaoge's body spun, exerting force with his arm, directly making a great circle. The next moment, this fallen practitioner's entire body was thrown into the air by Yan Zhaoge in another direction. That direction was precisely the massive ball of light that the other person had pushed out with both palms. A boom resounded as the first opponent was forcibly used as a meat shield by Yan Zhaoge, blocking the ferocious attack of the second opponent. The violent light scattered in all directions, unable to harm Yan Zhaoge, as well as Yi Zhongzhou, Zhang Yao, and the others. After flicking his arm, Yan Zhaoge also shot out like a thunderbolt, his palm continuing to slam onto the body of the first fallen practitioner, who had blocked the attack for him, having originally already been heavily injured after receiving a full-powered blow from his companion. Yan Zhaoge now followed up with another palm, instantly losing his life. At this moment, within the fragment of the eye of the Thunder Emperor atop the Golden Tower, a boom resounded. The purple orb abruptly vibrated, a vibration so fast that it could not be captured by human vision. It was as though the ancient Thunder Emperor had blinked, flicked his finger, blinked, in an instant. Infinite, boundless, violent thunderbolts completely erupted in this short instant. An instant's thunder, in an instant, combusting everything, concentrating all of its power to be unleashed in a single instant. Illuminated by the light of thunder, Yan Zhaoge's expression did not change as he pushed the corpse of his first opponent with his palm, resembling raising a shield, continuing to smash towards his second opponent. The enemy clenched his teeth, pushing out with his palms once more, wanting to shatter his companion's corpse along with Yan Zhaoge. However, just as the two neared each other, Yan Zhaoge's figure resembled the agility of a monkey as he abruptly spun. The enemy's palm only shattered that corpse, while Yan Zhaoge appeared by his side, a violent palm mightily descending with the momentum of collapsing the heavens. An explosive boom resounded as the second opponent's skull was directly smashed apart by Yan Zhaoge's palm. Only now did Lu Shengfeng, who had been chasing Yan Zhaoge with all his might, just arrive behind him. Yan Zhaoge turned, his gaze like lightning as he gazed at Lu Shengfeng. Lu Shengfeng's heart trembled, the light of thunder illuminating his face to the point that it turned purple. Meanwhile, Yan Zhaoge strode forward, punching straight out towards Lu Shengfeng. His aura chi agglomerated, blazing fire enveloping the heavens and covering the earth, sweeping away all evil spirits and monsters. Not daring to hesitate in the slightest, Lu Shengfeng's new arm formed of black light also punched out. As the light flickered, numerous illusory scenes were formed, countless evil devils seemingly howling savagely within the black light. As Yan Zhaoge punched out, the roars of dragons and tigers resounded, the terrifying power extinguishing countless evil devils as it swept through everything before it. To be continued. Chapter 192. Yen Zhaoge punched out with his right fist before immediately taking a step forward, his left elbow smashing out horizontally. Then he took the third step, lowered his body slightly, and smashed forward with his right shoulder. Finger-flicking, shocking thunder, triple strike. The first punch of Yen Zhaoge's right fist directly shattered that new arm of Lu Xingfeng's, formed a black light. Lu Xingfeng was shocked. He couldn't dodge in time and could only take it head-on. He circulated his divine mountain body to the extreme. However, Yen Zhaoge's left elbow shot out like a sudden clap of thunder, mightily striking Lu Xingfeng's chest. Lu Xingfeng's face suddenly turned pale. The divine mountain overlord body was broken again. Next, Yen Zhaoge's finger-flicking shocking thunder propelled his third strike, his right shoulder slamming mightily into Lu Xingfeng's chest. A muffled pong resounded as Yen Zhaoge seemed to have smashed into a great mountain with his shoulder, Lu Xingfeng's body directly flying backwards. Amidst his tragic cries, fresh blood spurted madly out of Lu Xingfeng's mouth as his entire body's aura-chi was scattered by Yen Zhaoge with a single blow. A large part of his chest had caved in. Many white bones twisted and pierced out of his flesh. Lu Xingfeng fell to the ground like a rag sack. His entire body was limp, and he was gasping for air more than he was gasping for air. Blood foam kept flowing out of his mouth. While his strength had risen due to falling to the dark side, the current Yen Zhaoge had improved even more than when they had first clashed. Beneath the flickering light of thunder, Yen Zhaoge's gaze was cold as he looked calmly at the fallen Lu Xingfeng on the ground. I said before, senior apprentice brother Yi and junior apprentice sister Zhang will have the chance to personally take revenge on you. Lu Xingfeng's eyes widened, and his body twitched as he struggled, but it was difficult for him to even move a finger. As though proving Yen Zhaoge's words, atop the golden tower, the eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment flickered with immeasurable radiance in that instant, releasing infinite thunderbolts. An instant later, the light from the eye of the Thunder Emperor suddenly dimmed, disappearing without a trace. It was as if the terrifying scene from before had been an illusion. However, crackling sounds rang out incessantly. The light on the golden tower suddenly dissipated. Its surface lost its luster and became like an ordinary stone pillar. The surface of the pagoda was covered in cracks. It kept shattering and falling down. It was like a meteor shower. The black runes that were wrapped around the tower like chains vibrated in unison. Then, as if they were enduring an irresistible force, they stretched taut. Afterward, these black formation patterns were breaking apart one by one. Countless spirit patterns rolled backwards, shrinking back into the surrounding black mist. The entire formation actually began to reverse. Elder Mo's angry roar resounded in the air, and the other decimating abyss experts' cries of surprise and anger rose and fell in the distance. What made Lu Xingfeng feel the most despair was that he was lying on the ground, struggling to turn his neck to look at the red door of light in the sky. It was difficult for him to move his neck, but he could see it from the corner of his eyes. The red light gate that was originally standing at the peak of the tower began to dissipate as the tower collapsed. Needless to say, the real door of the 9 serenities that was projected on the ground, the door of the 9 serenities that was about to open, had lost all hope. Yi Zhongzhou, Wan Ping, Li Jingwan, Xiao Yu, and Zhang Yao all had dazed looks on their faces. In their eyes, in a short instant, the situation that was on the verge of despair suddenly reversed. In the red light, devilish domain, the towering pagoda shattered and collapsed, turning into countless pieces of rubble that fell like a torrential rain. Down below, Yen Zhaoge's towering figure resembled that of a descending divinity, the terrifying aura of the 9 underworlds. After a slight pause, it shook crazily, yet showed signs of being at the end of the road. An instant's thunder. In that instant, ignited all of its power and erupted, its might powerful. The Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment. Wielded by Yen Zhaoge, it truly shook the core of the devilish domain grand formation, to the disbelief of others. After burning it once, the Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment uncontrollably fell into a dormant state, the purple orb turning dim and lusterless, its aura completely gone as it entered a dormant state, awaiting recovery. Yen Zhaoge's own essence, qi and spirit, closely linked with the Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment, also began to decline rapidly at this moment. But just at this moment, a sword light lit up. The sword light was bright, bright as fire, instantly illuminating the dark space, its target being Yen Zhaoge. Yen Zhaoge's expression did not change as he calmly looked at the Zhao Hao who was assaulting him. Zhao Hao stared coldly at Yen Zhaoge, the crimson sword within his hands overflowing with light, resembling flying fire. It was, shockingly, a spirit artifact. Xiao Yu stared hard, his eyes wide. As a fellow disciple, he knew that infinite boundless mountain had not bestowed a spirit artifact upon Zhao Hao. Yen Zhaoge was not surprised at Zhao Hao's heaven-defying fortuitous encounter, possessing a treasure along with him, as he only focused on the sword that was attacking towards him. Your strength is currently greatly diminished, and I originally disdained taking advantage of you when you are down. However, your cultivation base is originally higher than mine, and only now can it be considered a fair battle between us. Zhao Hao said coldly. During the Heavenly Connection meet, I contacted you through old MO, wanting to battle you at the same cultivation level, but you did not dare to accept. But now, if you dare, you want a battle. If you don't dare, you still want a battle. It is not up to you. The sword within his hands, in the time it took for sparks to fly off a flint, the sword aura resembling blazing fire spreading throughout the plains. The sword light was like fire, as specks of starlight seemed to light up numerous shooting stars descending from the sky. Under this sword, a sharp, profound sword intent was contained, the starlight and the fiery light seemingly merging as one. The crimson sword's sword light gradually turned from red to gold, the all-encompassing golden fiery light scattered, before all of its power condensed into a single line, its target being Yen Zhaoge, Pill Fire Divine Sword, Starfire Trailing Skies. Yen Zhaoge, draw your sword. Zhao Hao roared, come fight. Accompanied by this loud roar of his, the aura of his sword surged madly, while he was still a late inner aura martial scholar. Under this sword, it seemed like it could split the heavens and the earth apart. At this moment, Zhao Hao's body seemed to have become incomparably tall, as within his pupils, a figure vaguely surfaced. That figure wielded his sword and sang loudly, domineering, completely unbridled as he rampaged through the world. As he brandished his sword, the heavens cleaved and the earth split apart, as though there was nothing that could obstruct his footsteps. While Zhao Hao was clearly still only a late inner aura martial scholar, the power of his sword was terrifying, enveloping the surrounding area, pressuring people to the point that they trembled, their limbs turning soft. Yi Zhongzhou, Zhang Yao, and the others were all shaken, shocked beyond compare. Only Yen Zhaoge's expression was as per usual, just that he was looking at Zhao Hao with a slightly strange gaze. Facing this starfire trailing skies of Zhao Hao's, while Yen Zhaoge was currently extremely weak, he was still not flustered. A jade light lit up, meeting Zhao Hao's golden sword light. The clear qi within Yen Zhaoge's dantian dispersed, the chaotic qi mass surfacing, ice and fire intermingling, yin and yang merging. His aura qi was no longer blazing hot, nor icy cold, instead remaining completely chaotic, without yin and without yang, without beginning and without end. The next moment, this chaos mightily exploded. Not the coiling dragon sleeve, not the Big Dipper sword, not the Taiji Cloud Dragon sword, nor any other sword art, nor was it any other martial art. Yan Zhaoge's mind was clear. All that he had cultivated and seemed to have been merged together at this moment. Before, in some indescribable manner, the many different forces merged together, erupting simultaneously. It was as though all things had been absorbed into chaos before the chaos was destroyed, the universe reopening. The jade green sword light and the golden sword light met head-on in midair. The golden light shattered mightily. Looking at Zhao Hao's disbelieving expression, Yan Zhaoge said softly, "Gao, you want to die once more, right?" Chapter 193. Two spiritual swords, one dark green and one pure gold, clashed in midair. As Yan Zhaoge brandished his sword, the grand scene of chaos being extinguished and the universe being reopened vaguely appeared within the concept. It was like the end of everything, but also like the beginning of everything. Wherever the sword light passed, Zhao Hao's flashing golden flame sword light was instantly extinguished. The incinerating light sword in Zhao Hao's hand was instantly suppressed by the jade dragon sword, becoming dim and lightless. Yan Zhaoge's terrifying sword intent shot upwards, chopping straight towards Zhao Hao. A slightly stunned expression surfaced on Zhao Hao's face, as he could only feel that Yan Zhaoge's sword contained a terrifying concept that could annihilate all things. His astral energy and sword intent had actually completely collapsed, and he was unable to withstand it. During the heavenly connection meet, I also didn't see him execute it. This sword of his, to the end, Zhao Hao could feel Yan Zhaoge's current weakness, to the point that even releasing his Orochi was difficult. In terms of cultivation base, the current Yan Zhaoge did not possess an advantage. Zhao Hao had been a martial saint in his previous life, so how could he possibly suffer a loss in this aspect if he were to talk about the horizons and knowledge brought by a higher cultivation level? However, without any reason at this moment, he was defeated cleanly and cleanly. Zhao Hao shouted, "Devour the earth!" With a flip of his palm, an inconspicuous little pill furnace that was pure black in color appeared. There was no aura coming from the pill furnace, nor was there a flash of spirit light. There were no special energy fluctuations. It was as if it was an ordinary object. However, as Yan Zhaoge's sword tapped on the small black pill furnace, the power contained within the sword was like a clay ox entering the sea, instantly vanishing without a trace. The low-grade spirit weapon, the jade dragon sword, pierced the surface of the pill furnace, but it did not leave any marks on the pill furnace. Yan Zhaoge narrowed his eyes, not slowing in the slightest as he immediately struck out with another palm, carrying the pill furnace. Zhao Hao resembled a shield as he moved to block Yan Zhaoge's attacks. Yan Zhaoge raised his brows, unable to activate it. One can only rely on the miraculous nature of the treasure itself. Is it used as a shield? His palm that was striking towards Zhao Hao suddenly changed direction. His exquisite moves were unleashed, and a sky full of palm shadows enveloped over. Zhao Hao waved his sword in retaliation. "Yan Zhaoge, I will kill you today." The golden tower collapsed, the red door of light disappeared, and the formation supporting the infernal domain suddenly reversed. The world of red light that everyone was in gradually disintegrated, and the black demonic chi above their heads suddenly stopped and then quickly dissipated. One was black and the other was red. Two divine mountains that resembled pillars supporting the heavens appeared above Yan Zhaoge's head once more. Elder Mo's furious roar came from the black body. "Little brat from the Yan clan, you're courting death." The towering mountain peak directly smashed down towards Yan Zhaoge's head. The light before Yan Zhaoge's eyes instantly dimmed as a black shadow above his head grew larger and larger, obscuring the heavens and concealing the sun. The terrifying aura almost paralyzed his entire body, rendering him unable to move. "Take care of yourself first." Yen Zhaoga's expression did not change as he smiled indifferently. The demonic domain formation began to reverse, and strands of demonic chi began to frantically surge into the bodies of the fallen evils. At this moment, the fallen evil martial artists who had received the boost from the demonic chi were unable to enjoy the boost in power. The rapidly reversing devil chi had instead become a huge threat, violently attacking their bodies. That black divine mountain had originally been pressuring down towards Yen Zhaoga. Now, however, it shook intensely as if a mountain was collapsing. The massive spirit formation that supported the black divine mountain also became unstable at this moment, beginning to break apart unceasingly. Numerous runes and sigils were extinguished, transforming into streaks of light as they dissipated within the air. Elder Emo roared in rage. "Little thief!" At the same time, the red divine mountain formed of Shan Sherwing's fist intent. It mightily collided with the black divine mountain. The black divine mountain, which had originally already been on the verge of collapse, instantly began to collapse and shatter. Elder Mo's devilish chi rebounded. The Shan Sherwing who had originally been suppressed by him instantly surpassed Elder Mo in terms of power. The situation of the battle instantly reversed. The black divine mountain and the black spirit formation shattered together. Elder Mo's manic, unresigned face was revealed, his golden pupils staring at the red divine mountain before him, then at Yen Zhaoga down below, a blood-red light flickering madly within his pupils as the flames of rage surged to the heavens. However, Shan Sherwing did not let him off. The red body formed of his fist intent descended once more, shocking Elder Mo to the point of spurting out fresh blood madly. Elder Mo roared in anger. His body was connected to thin and long chains made of black light and shadow runes. The thin chains formed of devilish chi surged towards his body in reverse, the impact instantly causing Elder Mo to spurt out another mouthful of fresh blood. Meanwhile, Shan Sherwing's attack did not give him any chance to counterattack at all as it struck once more. "Child of the Yen family, you will not have a good end." Elder Mo knew that it was already hard for him to escape. Letting out a frenzied roar, he completely ignored Shan Sherwing, wanting to muster his final bit of strength to kill Yen Zhaoga, venting the hatred in his heart. However, the black runic chains on his body caused his already heavily injured body to be unable to bear the burden, his flesh and blood exploding mightily. As Elder Mo's figure halted in midair, Shan Sherwing's attack had already caught up to him. A massive boom resounded, the sound of 10,000-year profound rock completely shattering and shattering resounded. Elder Mo's life came to an end as he spat out a mouthful of blood, his aura chi and fist intent completely extinguished. He died with remaining grievances, glaring at Yen Zhaoga. This old man is unresigned. A veteran martial grandmaster expert perished just like that. The violent essence chi within the air dispersed, sweeping up boundless winds and clouds, blowing to the point that even those below were unable to stand stably. Yi Zhongzhou, Zhang Yao, and the others who had stood up with much difficulty, all fell unsteadily once more, bearing the impact of the chi currents. Yen Zhaoga also resembled a small boat in the wind, but his attacking hands were stable as a monolith. Stabbing towards Zhao Hao with his sword, Zhao Hao retaliated with the incinerating light sword. Yen Zhaoga's empty hand punched out towards Zhao Hao, the terrifying concept of chaos being extinguished and the universe opening once more appearing, facing Yen Zhaoga's iron fist. Zhao Hao's gaze was both cold and blazing hot as he raised the small black incense burner, using it to block Yen Zhaoga's attack. However, as Yen Zhaoga's fist came into contact with that small black incense burner, the destructive power suddenly calmed, everything turning completely silent and undetectable. It was as though the process of the universe opening had temporarily come to a halt, everything returning to chaos once more. No Een, no young, no before, no after, no beginning, no end, no sense. Zhao Hao's expression changed slightly, his face expressionless. Yan Zhaoga's stance abruptly changed as he spread his fingers, grabbing towards Zhao Hao's wrist. Being extremely experienced, Zhao Hao's reaction was even faster. At the same time that Yan Zhaoga changed his stance, he abruptly increased the force in his hand that was carrying the small incense burner, the back of his hand resembling a massive hammer as it smashed down towards Yan Zhaoga's arm. It was Infinite Boundless Mountain's direct lineage martial art, the heaven-breaking hammer. Yan Zhaoga's gaze was like lightning as he quickly regained his qi, exerting force once more. Fingers snapped shocking thunder. Spreading open his fingers, he abruptly clenched them together and lightly brushed Zhao Hao's wrist, as if he was playing the pipa. However, Zhao Hao's arm trembled as if it had been electrocuted. Blood gushed out from his wrist as all his meridians were severed. Zhao Hao's hand could no longer hold onto the small incense burner. Not waiting for him to react, within Yan Zhaoga's other hand, the jade dragon sword roared out, a terrifying force that could extinguish chaos slashing towards Zhao Hao once more. Yan Zhaoga, amidst his indignant roar, Zhao Hao felt a chill on his neck. Subsequently, the destructive sword intent spread from the wound on his neck to his entire body, tearing his entire body apart. Flesh and blood shattered, tendons and bones broken. His soul was shattered. Everything shattered. Yan Zhaoga's expression was cold and indifferent. This is the second time already. Now it feels like it's also not that big of a deal. Chapter 194. As Yan Zhaoga's sword aura entered his body, Zhao Hao's body was unable to withstand it as it completely shattered, directly transforming into a mist of blood that filled the air. An indistinct, illusory figure seemed to be drifting in front of Yan Zhaoga. His facial features were somewhat similar to Zhao Hao's, but they weren't exactly the same. Yan Zhaoga had seen the portrait of the Pill Fire Divine, Sword Gouge, that year. Other than resembling Zhao Hao, this illusory figure also resembled Gao Zhe. It was the other party's soul. However, at this moment, his soul was also fragmented and on the verge of destruction. Zhao Hao, or perhaps Gao Zhe, glared fixedly at Yan Zhaoga, letting out a soundless, enraged roar that seemed to resound by Yan Zhaoga's ears. If I don't die today, I will definitely make a comeback and take revenge. Yan Zhaoga, and the broad Creed Mountain behind you, we will not rest until one of us is dead. We will definitely fight it out with you, to the death. Yan Zhaoga looked at him calmly, saying mildly, "You die, I live. This is pretty good." Zhao Hao roared unwillingly at the sky. At this time, the small black incense burner that had fallen to the ground suddenly emitted a suction force, pulling Zhao Hao's broken soul into it. "You're doing the same thing?" The corners of Yan Zhaoga's mouth arched slightly upwards, extending his palm. His power surged as he instantly locked Zhao Hao's remnant soul in place, causing it to be unable to enter the small black incense burner. Looking at Zhao Hao, Yan Zhaoga smiled mildly. The reason Yi Jing was able to play this trick in the ceiling dragon abyss back then was because I did not intend to kill him at that time. As for you, damn it, you won't survive. As Yan Zhaoga exerted force with his palm, Zhao Hao's remnant soul instantly distorted. Zhao Hao roared. "You little ant," Yan Zhaoga chortled. "You had best understand that right now you are the ant that you speak of." "How weak is it?" Yan Zhaoga raised his brows. "Weak to the point that I don't even care if you hate me, don't care why you view my broad Creed Mountain with hostility. If you're not in the way, I can't be bothered with you. If you dare to poke a thorn in my side, I'll just kill you." Yan Zhaoga looked calmly at Zhao Hao. "This is my view of you, simple and clear. It's just as simple." Zhao Hao's face was ashen, but he could no longer say anything. His soul was completely extinguished within Yan Zhaoge's palm. His soul was destroyed, and he was beyond redemption. Yan Zhaoge's expression remained calm. He didn't even blink. Yi Zhongzhou, Xiao Yu, Zhang Yao, and the rest stared blankly at this scene, unable to regain their senses. On the other hand, Lu Shengfeng, who was paralyzed on the ground, was dumbstruck like a wooden chicken, and he seemed to have lost his soul. Actually, from the moment Yan Zhaoge had appeared till now, only a short period of time had passed. Saving people, breaking the array, killing the enemy. Everything. It happened in the span of a few breaths. The situation was completely reversed in an instant. A moment earlier, the Great Nine Underworld's door had still seemed like it was about to descend. The next moment, it was Yan Zhaoge domineeringly slaying Zhao Hao and the others, the devilish domain grand formation collapsing in reverse. Gazing at Yan Zhaoge's towering figure on the great earth, Yi Zhongzhou, Zhang Yao, and the others were momentarily dazed. Yan Zhaoge calmly watched as the all-encompassing black mist-like devilish qi gradually dissipated. The terrifying aura that originated from the 9 underworlds also gradually faded away. The illusory great door on the ground completely vanished. There seemed to be an extremely unwilling will transmitted over from across endless space and time, roaring by Yan Zhaoge's ear. Yan Zhaoge's expression did not change, returning his sword to its sheath. He raised his head and gazed over, seeing the dissipating devilish qi transforming into numerous chains that danced all over the sky. It was not just Infinite Boundless Mountain's Elder MO. The other fallen practitioners all suffered the backlash of the formation to some extent. The devilish qi surged in reverse, rushing back into their bodies. The higher the cultivation base of the fallen practitioner, the more severe the backlash they suffered from the devilish qi would be. Without the boost of the devilish qi, they would instead be injured by it. Under such circumstances, the decimating abyss experts instantly collapsed, suffering a great defeat. Within the sky, the red divine mountain paused for a moment. Yan Zhaoge could feel Shan Sherwing's gaze falling on him. A pity that he is not a disciple of my infinite, boundless mountain. Shan Sherwing seemed to sigh regretfully whilst also in praise, leaving behind some indistinct words before he instantly left, continuing to kill the other decimating abyss experts. As Yan Zhaoge watched Shan Sherwing leave, a suction force emanated from his palm, sucking up the small black incense burner that had fallen beside Zhao Hao's corpse. To him, compared to Zhao Hao, he was instead more interested in this small incense burner. That sword which had slain Zhao Hao and that sword which had previously defeated Zhao Hao's Starfire Trailing Skies were both martial arts that Yan Zhaoge had comprehended and created himself. His cultivation base unceasingly rising, he had unceasingly sorted out his martial arts, already beginning to form his own style, integrating them into one. Finger-flicking shocking thunder was just the beginning. The martial art that he had just executed contained a more profound principle. While it was still in its embryonic form, as compared to finger-flicking shocking thunder, its power was already not to be underestimated. Yan Zhaoge had executed this martial art, transforming it into a sword art, controlling his spirit artifact, the Jade Dragon Sword, to assassinate, yet had been unable to leave behind even a single mark on this small black incense burner. This meant that this seemingly unremarkable small black incense burner had an extraordinary foundation. Therefore, while Yan Zhaoge was extremely interested in this black incense burner, he also felt some fear. As he regulated his breathing, recovering his depleted vitality, he inspected the black incense burner. At first, he hadn't felt anything, but as Yan Zhaoge focused all of his attention on the incense burner, he felt his mind shake as though his soul was about to leave his body and enter that black incense burner on its own. Yan Zhaoge's heart jolted slightly as he stabilized his mind. He slowly extended his hand, infusing his aura chi within, causing it to surge unceasingly. The aura chi he infused within quickly disappeared without a trace, also without any feedback whatsoever, completely severing its connection with its original owner, Yan Zhaoge. Accompanied by the unceasing infusing of aura chi, Yan Zhaoge's mind was struck, and he instantly felt slightly dazed once more. However, he had long since been prepared this time. Even as he stabilized his mind, he still continued to investigate the small black incense burner. Yan Zhaoge's consciousness seemed to have merged into a world of complete darkness, tranquil and deep, and eternally endless darkness. Yan Zhaoge knit his brows. He discovered that there was a strange force acting on his mind, preventing him from leaving this world of darkness, attempting to make him sink deeper and deeper within. The world in front of him didn't have any light at all. The darkness was extremely pure, as though all of the light that shone on it had been absorbed, leaving only the deepest darkness behind. Even though it was only a boundless darkness, Yan Zhaoge's mind seemed to have been endlessly enticing his mind to sink completely within. Although Yan Zhaoge could feel that this world of darkness originally didn't have any ill intentions. However, he could be 100% sure that if he couldn't control his mind and was engulfed by the darkness, his soul would forever be imprisoned within this boundless darkness, and his fleshly body would also become an empty shell. To be continued. P.S. Thanks to book friend 140/705/135/821/981, brackets added to prevent a series of numbers from being blocked, for tipping. Congratulations to book friend 140/705/135/821/981 for becoming this book's new alliance chief. Book friend 140/705/135/821/981. The alliance is mighty and domineering. I would also like to thank everyone who tipped, subscribed, and voted for this book. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 195. Yan Zhaoge was calm, not panicking in the slightest, advancing within this darkness. It was undoubtedly another tempering of his mind and will. Any weakness, laziness, or wavering would allow the darkness to take advantage of it. Through resisting the temptation of the darkness, Yan Zhaoge's willpower rose once more, expelling the impurities within his mind. At the end, Yan Zhaoge strolled leisurely within the boundless darkness, relaxed and at ease. While there was darkness that could pull people into the deep abyss, it was completely ineffective against him. At this moment, Yan Zhaoge felt something. Smiling, he raised his head. Above his head in the darkness, a pair of jet-black eyes appeared, silently gazing at him. Within the silent darkness, Yan Zhaoge did not speak, the black eyes also not emitting any sound, but a strange connection was formed between the two. The black eyes were emotionless, seemingly acknowledging Yan Zhaoge's existence as they gradually closed, no longer appearing as if they had never existed in the first place. Yan Zhaoge smiled slightly. At this moment, his consciousness had freely retreated from the world of darkness. Seeing light once more before his eyes, Yan Zhaoge played with the small black incense burner rather interestedly. Flipping it over, he saw two ancient characters inscribed at the bottom of the incense burner. Devouring Earth. Yan Zhaoge thought of how Zhao Hao had also shouted these two words when he had clashed with him earlier. Earth-devouring burner. Yan Zhaoge pondered. This was not an ordinary treasure, nor was it a spirit artifact, but it seemed to possess its own spirituality and will. That pair of black eyes was not a mental imprint left behind by someone else, but a manifestation of the earth-devouring burner itself after it had gained spirituality. Yan Zhaoge muttered to himself. Interesting, wanting to truly grasp this treasure and not use it clumsily like Zhao Hao. I'm afraid that I'll have to spend some effort. keeping the incense burner. Yan Zhaoge stood where he was, continuing to meditate quietly. Previously, he had also expended a great deal of energy. It wasn't that he was completely exhausted. It was also the battle that consumed the most yuan qi in history. Fighting against Lu Shengfeng, Zhao Hao, and the others was fine. What was crucial was that his vital energies had fused with the fragment of the Eye of the Thunder Emperor, allowing him to activate an instant's thunder and ignite the power of the Saint Artifact fragment in an instant, although Yan Zhaoge himself would not act like he was currently retracting the fragment of the Eye of the Thunder Emperor. His essence chi had completely dried up, but he also felt like a thief had left. However, it would not be difficult for Yan Zhaoge to recover. In his Dantian sea of energy, the mass of chaotic energy vibrated and split into streams of ice and fire. Yin and Yang complemented each other and rapidly nourished his nearly dried-up vitality. Comparatively speaking, the Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment was much more troublesome. The purple orb formed by the sacred artifacts fragment dimmed. It was like a gray stone bead without the slightest luster. As Yan Zhaoge communicated with it mentally, he could only feel a minuscule amount of spirituality, as the other party seemed to have sunk into a deep slumber that resembled a fake death. He wanted to turn it back into lightning and merge it with his right eye, but he couldn't do it for the time being. As Yan Zhaoge regulated his breathing, he pondered, after all, it is only a fragment, not the true sacred artifact of the past, the Eye of the Thunder Emperor. It is rumored that, at its peak, the Eye of the Thunder Emperor, an instant's thunder, cleaves the heavens and cleaves the earth. Heaven and earth split, and in the next instant, its power will be restored to its original state. Just like how we breathe an exhalation. It is a bolt of divine thunder that shatters space. As it inhales the surrounding essence of the heavens, and the earth will all replenish itself. And now, having exhausted all of its power, wanting to accumulate it once more, I'm afraid that a very long time will be needed. When it is used the next time, it will be fine if I don't use an instant's thunder. Otherwise, it will still be like this time, exhausting everything in one go. Yan Zhaoge let out a long breath, his condition recovering greatly. Luckily, I established a close connection with the Eye of the Thunder Emperor earlier. Otherwise, things would have been much more troublesome this time. TSK, after returning this time, I definitely have to properly strengthen my attainments in formations. Yan Zhaoge shook his head, turning to look in another direction. There, Yi Zhongzhou, Zhang Yao, and the others supported each other, bandaging their wounds and regulating their breathing to alleviate their injuries. Seeing Yan Zhaoge look over, Yi Zhongzhou sighed, emotionally. Junior brother Yan, it was all thanks to you this time. Otherwise, we would all have lost our lives. Not only would we have died at Lu Xingfeng's hands, more importantly, the opening of the Great Nine Underworld's door would have been disastrous. Yan Zhaoge walked over. Senior brother Yi is polite. At a time like this, having the ability to do something, I naturally couldn't just stand by and watch. It's just that in order to break the formation earlier, I needed some time to prepare. I've made you suffer. Zhang Yao shook her head repeatedly. Senior brother Yan, don't say that. It was you who saved us. Li Jingwan said. If senior brother Yan had not stopped the opening of the Great Nine Underworld's door in time, we would still have died at the end of the day, still having the possibility of falling into Lu Xingfeng's hands, suffering even more pain, even more torture. As she said this, she swiveled her head to look in the other direction. There, Lu Shengfeng lay limply on the ground, half dead, while the other two fallen practitioners who had already been killed by Yan Zhaoge had already vanished without a trace. Wan Ping was currently bandaging his wounds. His face was pale and his expression weak, but his gaze was cold. He stood right by Lu Shengfeng's side, looking down on him as he lay on the ground. Lu Shengfeng barely managed to squeeze out a fawning smile that was filled with fear. "Senior, Brother Wan, you are a great person, and do not stoop to petty offenses." Ah. The latter half of his words were stuck in his throat, replaced by a tragic cry. Wan Ping forcefully stomped down on Lu Shengfeng's body. Lu Shengfeng's chest had long since been a mess of flesh and blood. Now, being stomped down by Wan Ping, he was instantly in so much pain that he wished he were dead. Wan Ping laboriously moved his foot, then stomped down on the wound on Lu Shengfeng's severed arm. Lu Shengfeng sucked in a breath of cold air, unable to even let out a tragic cry. Yan Zhaoge came to Wan Ping's side. Looking at him, Wan Ping was silent for a moment before saying, "Many thanks for saving my life." "You're welcome," Yan Zhaoge nodded. Wan Ping hesitated slightly. "You want to stop me?" Yan Zhaoge waved his hands. "What are you talking about? Sparing his life was specifically for you to deal with." As he said this, Yan Zhaoge made a grabbing motion with his palm, threads of black light being sucked out from the wound on Lu Shengfeng's severed arm, landing within Yan Zhaoge's palm. I was just a little interested in the technique he used to temporarily reconstruct his severed arm. Keeping the black light, Yan Zhaoge turned and walked away. "Do what you need to do. Don't worry about me." Wan Ping nodded, gazing down at Lu Shengfeng once more. A look of despair instantly surfaced within Lu Shengfeng's eyes. Looking at the tragic cries of Lu Shengfeng, Yi Zhongzhou frowned slightly, sighing, not saying a word. Li Jingwan and Zhang Yao both turned their heads to the other side. Xiao Yu, who was also of the same clan as Lu Shengfeng, was currently a little dazed, seemingly thinking about something. Yan Zhaoge's gaze instead turned towards the place where the Golden Tower had previously been. That place was already a stretch of dilapidated walls, but amidst the rubble, there seemed to be something existing. "It's going to be 515 soon. I hope that I can continue charging towards the 515 red packet rankings. On the 15th of May, the reign of red packets will be able to reward the readers as well as publicize my work. Being together is also love. I will definitely do my best." To be continued. Chapter 196. There seemed to be something buried in the ruins. A faint black light shone out from the ruins. After observing the ruins for a moment, Yan Zhaoge extended his palm, his orochi surging as he blasted the shattered rocks away. A black crystal appeared in front of him. Yan Zhaoge stared at the black crystal for a while, carefully feeling the pulsating aura within before extending a finger, lightly tapping on its surface, infusing his orochi within. After entering the black crystal, the orochi circled once before returning to Yan Zhaoge's body. Following that, the essence chi contained within the black crystal was drawn out. Looking within his own body, Yan Zhaoge could see that as his orochi flowed back, an existence that resembled a black thread flowed from his fingertips into his body, reaching his Dantian's chi ocean along with his orochi. That black thread of essence chi was pure and condensed, making people feel a bit cold. But at the same time, he felt a wave of agitation in his heart, as if something was being tugged at and was about to make a move. A figure seemed to appear within Yan Zhaoge's mind. That figure was blurry and indistinct, but its facial features actually seemed similar to Yan Zhaoge's. It was just that as this figure met Yan Zhaoge's gaze, an evil chi that was not concealed could be seen within it. Looking calmly at this scene, Yan Zhaoge laughed lightly. Crystals formed after the formation has been reversed. The clear energy in his dantian dissipated, revealing a mass of chaotic energy. As the primal chaos surged, the black thread of essence energy was sucked into it. When the black thread entered, it immediately emitted white smoke. Within Yan Zhaoge's mind, that figure filled with evil qi instantly began gradually disappearing. Accompanied by Yen Zhaoge strengthening the amount of aura qi he had infused within the black crystal. The crystal stone essence qi that was drawn out from it was getting thicker and thicker. In the end, it was like a black stream of light. Through Yen Zhaoge's fingertip, it flowed along his meridians all the way to his dantian. More and more black light flowed in, and the mass of primal chaos qi gradually expanded. After a long time, the black crystal suddenly made a kacha sound, and then a crack appeared on the surface of the crystal. Then it completely shattered. The shattered fragments of the black crystal quickly turned into sand, and in the end were blown away by the wind, turning into dust. After expanding, the chaotic qi mass within Yen Zhaoge's dantian's qi ocean shrank very quickly, finally returning to its original state, as though nothing had ever happened at all. However, Yen Zhaoge could feel that his aura qi was growing more and more vigorous. At the same time, his spirit grew stronger and stronger. Gradually, he felt like he could do as he pleased. He was one step closer to the late Xiantian stage. The mass of primal chaos qi calmed down, and a clear qi emerged, wrapping around and concealing the mass of primal chaos qi. Yen Zhaoge retracted his technique, scanning their surroundings. He saw that the devilish qi between the heavens and the earth had already gradually dissipated. It was on the muddy bottom of clear, concealed lake. The water in this area had completely dried up, and this place now resembled the bottom of a massive basin. The demonic qi dispersed, and the demonic domain collapsed. Without the influence of the devil qi, the lake water that had been isolated further away began to fill up the empty space again, and surged toward this area. Yen Zhaoge could hear the sound of rushing water resounding from all directions, resembling mountain torrents. Over there, Lu Shengfeng had already died at Wan Ping's hands. Yi Zhongzhou, Li Jingwan, and the others were all supporting each other. Yen Zhaoge pushed out with his palm, his aura qi expanding outwards, transforming into a massive hand that lifted Yi Zhongzhou and the others up, rising into the air together. Very quickly, the flood surged over from all directions. Beneath their feet, it had once more turned into a kingdom of water. However, the current clear concealed lake was destined to be different from before. For example, Clear Concealed Island and the other islands in the central region of the lake already no longer existed. At the bottom of the lake, a massive, deep crater was an indication of what had happened earlier. Gazing into the distance, Yen Zhaoge felt that the geography of Clear Concealed Lake was also completely different. Numerous martial practitioners, especially quite a few martial grandmaster experts, had engaged in a great battle on or in the vicinity of Clear Concealed Lake, easily affecting thousands of li as the heavens were overturned and the earth was overturned. The once beautiful Clear Concealed Lake had completely become history. The fog that enveloped the lake all year round had completely vanished, the flow of spiritual qi in the entire region chaotic to the point that it had completely changed. Compared to the strength of the participants, if not for the existence of the devilish domain grand formation and the grand formation that Turbid Wave Pavilion had originally set up here, the vast Clear Concealed Lake might have already been completely erased from the face of the earth. Standing in midair, Yen Zhaoge's heart suddenly jolted slightly. Swiveling his head, he saw a figure rapidly approaching from the distance. The newcomer was a burly man who looked like he was crying to the heavens and crying to the earth, "Young master, it's really great that you're all right." Who else could it be but Ahu? Yen Zhaoge smiled. Luckily, it was a daunting experience without any mishaps, successfully resolving the problem. Behind Ahu followed a massive creature, its fur alternating between black and white, with massive dark circles around its eyes, charmingly naive as it strode forward with its trademark splayed inwards. This big fella was naturally Pan Pan. Not caring about Sikong Qing sitting on its back, it spread its legs, shooting towards Yan Zhaoga like it was flying. Yan Zhaoga was naturally happy that Pan Pan was intimate with him. However, he didn't want such a big fella to pounce on him. As he hurriedly raised his hand to stop Pan Pan, Yan Zhaoga patted Pan Pan's big head, and Pan Pan stuck out his tongue, lightly licking Yan Zhaoga's palm, looking at the body of water before her, which was gradually regaining its calm. Feeling the spiritual qi fluctuations brought about by the great battle that had yet to conclude in the distance, Sikong Qing's eyes shone brightly. Letting Sikong Qing, Yi Zhongzhou, and the others pay their respects, Yan Zhaoga looked to the other side. There, the figure of Xue Fei appeared. Seeing that Yan Zhaoga and the others were fine, Xue Fei first let out a sigh of relief before asking Yan Zhaoga, the devilish domain grand formation having collapsed, the aura of the 9 underworlds also vanishing. All this as Yan Zhaoga smiled. Luck, luck. Xue Fei lightly punched his shoulder. You're really good. You really managed to do it. This is much greater than the matter of the heavenly connection meet. Xue Fei sighed in admiration. It's hard to imagine that this is something that a martial scholar can do. Yan Zhaoga smiled slightly. Senior apprentice brother Su, you know that I had a fortuitous encounter obtaining a sacred artifact fragment. Otherwise, even the cleverest housewife cannot cook without rice. Xue Fei shook his head. It's a sacred artifact fragment, not a sacred artifact. Being able to use it sufficiently as a martial scholar, this in itself is already very impressive. Let alone the fact that this fortuitous encounter of yours was obtained through fighting with your competitors. It did not fall from the sky for no reason at all. Amidst his words, another figure appeared in the distance. Swiveling his head to look, Yan Zhaoga saw that it was Tang Yonghao, who had been separated from him earlier. Tang Yonghao had also known that Yan Zhaoga had wanted to enter the core of the formation, just that they had been separated in the process afterwards. At this moment, with the devilish domain grand formation having been destroyed, Tang Yonghao had immediately thought of Yan Zhaoga. After knowing that it had been Yan Zhaoga's handiwork, he said sincerely, Junior apprentice brother Yan, regardless of the relationship between our 2 clans, in this matter, I have to express my admiration, also thanking you for not letting the ordinary citizens of the 8 extremities world suffer a calamity. Yan Zhaoga said, Senior apprentice brother Tang speaks too seriously. Looking into the distance, he knit his brows slightly. The reason why things have become so troublesome this time is because the decimating abyss's corrosion is too strong. I wonder who exactly the problem is this time. It's going to be 515 soon. I hope that I can continue charging towards the 515 red packet rankings. On the 15th of May, the rain of red packets will be able to reward the readers as well as publicize my works. Being together is also love. I will definitely do my best. To be continued. Chapter 197. Hearing Yan Zhaoga's question, Tang Yonghao fell silent for a moment. Noticing this, Yan Zhaoga and Su Fei both felt rather puzzled as Su Fei asked, Senior apprentice brother Tang, do you know something? Tang Yonghao replied with a frown, I met someone on the way here and heard some rumors, but I'm not sure yet. Yan Zhaoga said, why don't you tell me about it first? Glancing at Yi Zhongzhou and Li Jingwan, Tang Yonghao sighed but did not speak, instead sending a sound transmission with his Orachi to Yan Zhaoga and Su Fei. According to the rumors, the one who caused the problem was Jade Sea City's Elder Chun, who led the team over to clear Concealed Lake this time. The face of that obstinate old man of Jade Sea City surfaced within Yan Zhaoga's mind. Elder Chun? Tang Yonghao said, right now, it's still not certain. Elder Chun seems to have disappeared without a trace. Only when he shows up will we be able to figure out the truth. He was of the Sacred Sun clan, the sworn enemy of Jade Sea City, and it would not be good for him to make any further evaluations. He himself was also not someone who would jump to conclusions. However, Yan Zhaoge still understood that Tang Yonghao's underlying meaning was that Elder Qin was currently nowhere to be seen, neither dead nor alive. Such a veteran, great Grandmaster powerhouse had actually disappeared. It was truly somewhat inconceivable. There are always reasons for being tempted by the 9 underworlds. For example, Lu Xingfeng has a violent temperament and likes to torture others. However, his temperament has been suppressed by the sect. Yan Zhaoge rubbed his temples. Martial grandmasters, especially martial grandmaster experts with high cultivation bases, tend to have firmer wills, not easily shaken by the 9 underworlds. However, it is exactly because of your firm will that you will be even more stubborn, and crazy after your mind is changed. Yan Zhaoge let out a long breath. I don't know why Infinite Boundless Mountain's Elder Imo is like this, but from the looks of it, he is obviously extremely extreme. He was filled with resentment, while Jade Sea City's Elder Qin seemed rather unruly and irascible before this. He is still magnanimous and upright at the end of the day. Tang Yonghao nodded. Xue Fei pondered for a moment. He said hesitantly, "Could it be because of his grandson?" Yan Zhaoge was rather baffled, while a look of realization appeared on Tang Yonghao's face. Xue Fei explained, "Zhaoge probably doesn't know much about it because it happened a little too early. Elder Qin had lost his son when he was young, and he only had one grandson left. However, his body has always been weak and sickly, and he is unable to practice martial arts. He can only slowly recuperate, and seeing his body getting weaker and weaker has become Elder Chen's biggest worry." He sighed. "This is something that happened a few years ago. In recent years, there hasn't been any news, so I don't know." Sigh. "Is that so?" Yan Zhaoge nodded, not saying anything more. His eyes looked into the distance. There. Victory and defeat were about to be decided in every battlefield. There was no hope for the 9 underworlds to descend, and the infernal domain had been shattered. The experts of the decimating abyss no longer had any hope of victory. Those who could flee began to flee, and those who could not flee fought to the death. The few who did not fall to the dark side still had a chance of survival after being captured alive. Most of those who had fallen to the dark side would be captured alive and interrogated for information. He would most likely be killed as well. As the great battles ended one after another, the events of Clear Concealed Lake this time finally gradually calmed down. One powerful aura after another began converging towards the center of the lake once more. The first to arrive. It was a white-haired old woman, her back arched as she coughed repeatedly, looking extremely weak. However, Yan Zhaoge, Su Fei, and Tang Yonghao all recognized this old woman as the Grand Elder of Turbid Wave Pavilion, one of the few experts of the entire lake domain. Zhang Yao saw that old woman. She even cheered, "Grandmaster." Wan Ping also bowed. Disciple Wan Ping greets Grandmaster. Looking at Zhang Yao, the old woman's face revealed some affection. Yan Zhaoge and the others, including the heavily injured Yi Zhongzhou, Li Jingwan, and Xiao Yu, also came forward to greet the old woman. After hearing Wan Ping and Zhang Yao's reports, the old woman's gaze fell on Yan Zhaoge. After carefully appraising him, she said slowly, "Broad Creed Mountain is very fortunate." Yan Zhaoge smiled. "Senior overpraises me." The old woman similarly smiled, no longer saying anything. As someone like her saw it, the Yan Zhaoge, who had dispelled the devilish domain grand formation, was even more worthy of attention than the Yan Zhaoge, who had swept through the numerous geniuses of his age in the heavenly connection meet. Indeed, being able to look down on all others of the same age, surpassing other monstrous geniuses, indicated that a youth's future was limitless, with the possibility of becoming a legend in the future. However, with a mere martial scholar cultivation base, he had suddenly emerged intervening in a major matter that only veteran martial grandmasters could play a decisive role in, also succeeding in a single stroke. This showed that Yan Zhaoge's vision, judgment, spirit, and talent were outstanding, already completely surpassing his current age and cultivation base. Being able to intervene in a matter that could affect the overall situation of the entire world as a martial scholar, when Yan Zhaoge's cultivation base rose in the future, what kind of storms would he be able to stir? From another perspective, geniuses who didn't die young were true geniuses. Among the masses, while the proportion of geniuses and heroes was small, under the conditions of such a massive population, monstrous geniuses also appeared in an endless stream. With the old woman's status and age, she had seen too many geniuses of all kinds in her lifetime. Not talking about others, having been able to reach her current position and cultivation base, when the old woman herself had been young, in that era, hadn't she also been a heaven's favored daughter? However, while there were innumerable geniuses, those who could ultimately reach such heights would forever only be a limited minority. With great waves washing away sand, too many geniuses had not been able to reach the heights that others had expected them to reach. And as the old woman saw it, Yan Zhaoge's actions, as compared to those young geniuses who merely possessed outstanding talent in the martial Tao, at least had a greater chance of walking towards higher and further places. Broad Creed Mountain has a successor. Now, it all depends on whether he can surpass his predecessors. Looking at Yan Zhaoge, the old woman sighed in admiration within her heart. The experts of the other sacred grounds arrived in succession. A purple-haired old man, a longtime elder of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, after having understood the whole story, gazed at Yan Zhaoge, not speaking for a long time. A middle-aged martial grandmaster beside him frowned. The decimating abyss experts were all tied down by us. This kid was just lucky, succeeding in his sneak attack with the power of the sacred artifact fragment, also not having any martial grandmasters obstructing him. Hearing his words, that purple-haired old man swiveled his head to look at this middle-aged man. The old man did not say a word, but caused the entire body of the middle-aged man to feel numb, virtually suffocating, cold sweat pouring out of him. Seeing that the middle-aged man was about to be unable to hold on any longer, the purple-haired old man retracted his gaze, saying mildly, "First of all, that sacred artifact fragment of his was not picked up on the road, but obtained after consecutively defeating my Heavenly Thunder Hall disciples. Yen Shan aside, do you think that you can defeat the mid-Xiantian Lin, Zhou, as an early Xiantian martial scholar? Afterwards, given you a sacred artifact fragment, how much of its power can you wield with your mid-Xiantian martial scholar cultivation base? Finally, you have also seen the strength of that devilish domain grand formation. How many martial scholars can accurately find the core of the formation while trapped within it, even with the sacred artifact fragment? Wanting to shake the core of the formation, they would also need to accurately judge the timing of the circulation of the formation, only then being able to succeed in a single strike. Otherwise, it would just be a pointless waste of the sacred artifact fragment's power. The purple-haired old man looked at that middle-aged man. Now, do you still think that this was merely luck, that if it were any other martial scholar, as long as they had the sacred artifact fragment, they would be able to do it? That middle-aged man's face was rather ashen as he lowered his head, not speaking. The purple-haired old man said mildly, "Indeed, the experts of the decimating abyss have all been held back by us on the outskirts. However, if not for him, the great 9 underworld's door would already have been opened, and the situation would have been completely different." Looking at Yan Zhaoge, he sighed. "From now onwards, in this old man's eyes, you are no longer just Yan Di's son. Broad Creed Mountain's Yan Zhaoge. This old man will remember this name." It was not just this purple-haired old man. The experts of the various sacred grounds present were all focused on Yan Zhaoge. From today onwards, the name of Broad Creed Mountain's Yan Zhaoge would be known by all. Who under the heavens would not know of a monarch? It will be 515 soon. I hope that I can continue charging towards the 515 red packet rankings. On the 15th of May, the reign of red packets will be able to reward the readers as well as publicize my work. Being together is also love. I will definitely do my best. To be continued. P.S. Many thanks to Autumn Appreciation for Cherry Blossom's bounty, celebrating Autumn Appreciation for Cherry Blossom becoming this book's 17th Alliance Chief. Autumn Appreciation for the mighty, domineering Cherry Blossom Alliance. Many thanks also to Jade Stealing Fragrance Alliance's bounty. Many thanks to everyone who has gifted this book, subscribed to this book, and supported this book with their monthly votes. Thank you all. Chapter 198. Charge! Charge! On Clear Concealed Lake, the battle finally calmed down. The peak experts of the various sacred grounds met once more, summarizing the new intelligence they had obtained, as well as discussing the next step regarding the issue of the 9 underworlds and the decimating abyss. Although the incident at Clear Concealed Lake this time was resolved, the various sacred grounds similarly suffered losses. Martial artists with relatively low cultivation bases were not idling around either. They were all communicating with people they were familiar with. The younger generation that had previously participated in the Heavenly Connection meet were no longer the main characters. However, as the core disciples of the various holy lands, their horizons, knowledge, and grasp of the current situation far surpassed their peers. Most of them had their own thoughts about the changes in the 9 underworlds. Among them, there were some who had perished in this strange change. No matter what their relationship was normally like when their fellow disciples thought about it, they all felt a bit sad. Of course, their gazes also fell on Yen Zhaoga from time to time. Looking at Yen Zhaoga at this moment, the bunch of youngsters all felt rather complex emotions. Even though he had been in the limelight during the Heavenly Connection meet, even though his talent and strength had suppressed many when they had looked at Yen Zhaoga earlier, there hadn't been much of a difference between them and themselves. Yen Zhaoga was more outstanding, having taken the lead. Amidst the admiration of many, most of them wanted to catch up and compete with him in the future. However, after understanding everything that had happened, many people gradually changed their minds. Yen Zhaoga seemed to be separated from them by a layer, no longer being of the same race. Although he was only a Grandmaster Realm martial artist, he had solved many problems that even a great Grandmaster might not be able to solve. Such a person, his performance in the Heavenly Connection meet seemed to be only natural. It was even to the extent that sparring with those of the same generation in the Heavenly Connection meet was actually not sufficient to truly display Yen Zhaoga's brilliance. The young geniuses had this thought in their hearts. All of them were momentarily silent. Countless thoughts appeared in their minds, their thoughts in disorder. There was an indescribable feeling. Everyone focused their attention on the 9 underworlds and the decimating abyss, on Yen Zhaoga. As such, very few people noticed that a person who should not have appeared at Clear Concealed Lake had also come here. A handsome youth with a calm expression and a sharp gaze, garbed in the garb of a direct disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, the son of the Heavenly Thunder Hall's first seat elder Lin Tianfeng, a heavens-favored son of the Heavenly Thunder Hall's younger generation, the thunder-rumbling young master alongside Yen Zhaoga, Huang Jie and Song Chao, Lin Zhou. His face was pale and weak. He had been injured by Yen Zhaoga earlier. Lin Zhou had been forced to use the blood transformation flowing light jade to activate a forbidden technique to escape, causing him to suffer a great loss of vitality. Even now, he had not fully recovered. Therefore, the Heavenspan Alliance meet this time. Lin Zhou was the same as Yen Shan, both not participating. Coupled with Jade Sea City's direct lineage martial art, one line edge, Jade Sea City had always wanted to find trouble with Lin Zhou. While the Heavenly Thunder Hall had provided intelligence on the 9 underworlds this time, more or less making Jade Sea City feel indebted to them, no longer pursuing the matter as urgently, Lin Zhou himself still avoided appearing before the eyes of Jade Sea City's bigwigs as much as possible. But this time, surrounding and annihilating the decimating abyss martial practitioners, Lin Zhou continued to secretly travel alongside the Heavenly Thunder Hall experts, arriving at Clear Concealed Lake. He didn't come here for the Heavenly Connection meet, nor for the 9 Hell's Abyssal Abyss. It also wasn't for revenge against Yan Zhaoga. Lin Zhou was here for someone else. Far away, concealing himself, he gazed into the distance, gazing at the figure of a girl who had already returned to the side of the Jade Sea City experts. Seeing her full body of injuries, a pained look appeared within Lin Zhou's gaze, but seeing that she was still fine at least, he also let out a sigh of relief. "Jingwan, it's good that you're fine." Lin Zhou gazed dazedly at Li Jingwan, recovering after a while as he sighed. "Sadly, you don't recognize me now. We should originally have gotten to know each other during this time's Heavenly Connection meet." Thinking of the Heavenly Connection meet, Lin Zhou's face sunk as his gaze swept past Yan Zhaoga's figure. In order to avoid drawing attention, his gaze swept past, not remaining for long, but Yan Zhaoga's appearance was firmly engraved within his mind. "And you, Yan Zhaoga, your life should originally have reached its end during this time's incident at Clear Concealed Lake." Lin Zhou closed his eyes, sucking in a deep breath. The infiltration of the decimating abyss is indeed powerful, being even more proficient in concealment. I exposed the identities of some people, forcing them to change their plans. Only then did those who had concealed themselves even more deeply be exposed. Otherwise, if the matter at Clear Concealed Lake had gone smoothly, the other party would still have continued to conceal themselves. This means that this time's incident at Clear Concealed Lake was only the beginning. They still have an even greater plan. Thinking of this, Lin Zhou frowned. Him and the Heavenly Thunder Hall having seized the initiative, they originally could have not only quelled the chaos of the decimating abyss, they would also have obtained benefits from the other 5 sacred grounds. However, because of the decimating abyss's counterattack, a huge twist had occurred in the matter, nearly causing them to fail on the verge of success. In the end, it had been Yan Zhaoga who had turned the tides, settling the matter with a single blow. This way, while the others would still thank the Heavenly Thunder Hall, a considerable number of them would feel that Yan Zhaoga had played a greater role. The favor that the other sacred grounds owed the Heavenly Thunder Hall was immediately diluted greatly. Lin Zhou slowly opened his eyes, lowering them, his gaze calm and without fluctuations. This time was only the beginning. Those of the Sacred Sun clan were similarly paying attention to Yan Zhaoga. Having produced such a figure of Broad Creed Mountain's younger generation, the Sacred Sun clan had no choice but to place great importance on him. Moreover, tracing back to the source, in the previous War of the Eastern Tang, as well as infinite boundless mountains' enmity with the Heavenly Thunder Hall, due to the thunder element revival art and the giant spirit magnetite vein, finally allying with Broad Creed Mountain and Jade Sea City, becoming enemies with the Sacred Sun clan. All these things were inextricably linked to Yan Zhaoga, the Sacred Sun clan's higher echelon, who had been in charge of surrounding and ambushing the decimating abyss martial practitioners. This time was precisely the Twilight Lord of the 7 reigning suns. Before this, the Sacred Sun clan elder who had come to Clear Concealed Lake along with Tang Yonghao, Huang Jia, and the others to participate in the Heavenly Connection meet was the Daybreak Lord of the 7 reigning suns. At the same time, the Daybreak Lord had also been the decimating abyss spy in the Sacred Sun clan. In the end, in the great battle earlier, the Daybreak Lord had been personally slain by the Twilight Lord. The Twilight Lord's expression was calm, not the slightest ripple of emotion, as he just looked quietly at the distant Yan Zhaoga, In the Eastern Tang, he had once been prepared to make a move to kill him, but in the end, he had been counterplotted by broad Creed Mountain. Not only had he not been able to do as he had wished, he had even been heavily injured by Shi Tai and Yen Di. The Twilight Lord looked for a while, not even turning his head as he sent a sound transmission with his aura chi to the Huang Jie behind him, having specially made a trip to clear Concealed Lake. You have already seen it. What do you think? Behind him, the serene and quiet youth did not answer the question, only saying, "My second life-bound year is about to arrive." Although it was a sentence without rhyme or reason, the Twilight Lord understood its meaning, because he was one of the few people who understood the youth behind him. It's fine if I keep a low profile normally, but my life-bound year should be a little special. Do something big and leave it as a memento. This was what Huang Jie had said before. What few people knew was that in his first life-bound year, when he was merely 12 years old, he had been confirmed as the next chief of the Sacred Sun clan. This had caused the position of chief to be held by the Huang family for 3 consecutive generations, virtually being hereditary. However, not a single one of the core higher echelon experts of the Sacred Sun clan objected, all of them supporting this decision. It will be 515 soon. I hope that I can continue charging towards the 515 red packet rankings. On the 15th of May, the reign of red packets will be able to reward the readers as well as publicize my works. Being together is also love. I will definitely do my best. To be continued. Chapter 199. As the Twilight Lord and Huang Jie were appraising Yen Zhaoge, Yen Zhaoge's gaze was actually also sweeping over the Sacred Sun clan's side. Yen Zhaoge's gaze swept past Huang Jie before falling on the other Sacred Sun clan disciples beside him. Not a single one of them had come to participate in the Heavenly Connection meet. While he still couldn't be sure if the other party had left, having similarly clashed with that masked martial grandmaster, however much Tang Yonghao trusted Huang Jie, he would definitely have done the most basic of investigations. Huang Jie being so calm, with some people having hindered his movements, the suspicion could already be largely eliminated. Yen Zhaoge's gaze surveyed the surroundings, seemingly nonchalant, but he was actually appraising those martial grandmasters whose cultivation bases were similar to the masked man's. Actually, it was very hard to say whether there were still any decimating abyss spies amongst those present. After all, not every decimating abyss martial practitioner would choose to fall to the dark side. In the heavens and earth of the devilish domain, it was indeed easy to arouse the devilish intent within one's heart, coveting momentary pleasure and completely falling to the dark side. However, this was not a definite thing. One may know a person's face, but not their heart. This phrase was displayed to the point here, not falling to the dark side, even if one's heart was filled with crafty schemes. As long as they concealed it well enough, it would be very hard for others to see through them, as long as there were no witnesses. Even if this person had secretly killed another person and then disposed of the corpse in a timely manner, he would still be able to strut out to meet everyone afterwards. On the contrary, fallen practitioners, once having completely fallen to the dark side, would be completely different from how they were normally, also hard to conceal, basically having no possibility of continuing to conceal themselves. Yen Zhaoge didn't dare, to be certain. In this world, there definitely wasn't a method of regaining one's human form after falling to the dark side, but the possibility of this was really too small. Comparatively speaking, restraining oneself from completely falling to the dark side would be the more likely choice for the lurking practitioner. Just like before the incident of Clear Concealed Lake, like Elder Mo and the others. Could I have been too stubborn before? Yen Zhaoge pondered. That martial grandmaster who ambushed and assassinated me was not a spy? After all, from the looks of it, he has already fallen to the dark side for some time, and not recently. He must be a member of the decimating abyss organization that usually hides in the Earth domain. Yen Zhaoga stroked his lower chin, covering yourself up tightly, yet not displaying the martial arts that you are truly proficient in. If they didn't catch him on the spot, they wouldn't be able to tell his identity. Who would know who he was? If you fall to the devil, you will become an obvious target. If he's not trying to hide his identity, why doesn't he use the martial arts that he's good at? Yen Zhaoga carefully recalled the scene back then, the sword arts and palm arts he used when clashing with me, senior apprentice brother Su, and the others were actually already at a very high level compared to his cultivation base. While we can be sure that it was not the martial arts he was originally proficient in, he should have also put in a lot of effort into it. Yen Zhaoga thought, his eyes narrowing slightly into slits. Why do I feel that? It's a little close to the time when he became a demon. This time, Zhaoga has done something extraordinary. As Fang Zhuan's elegant voice resounded by his ear, Yen Zhaoga reined in his thoughts, smiling as he answered, "The fortune of the heavens, second apprentice uncle, overpraises me." Fang Zhuan slowly shook his head. "No, you did very well. If not for your sudden appearance, the decimating abyss organization would have had a very high chance of success this time." With the great 9 underworld's door open, wanting to close it again, that would be extremely difficult. Yen Zhaoga asked, "Why hasn't Turbid Wave Pavilion's pavilion Lorden arrived? Is it the flame devils over at the East Sea causing trouble?" Fang Zhuan said, "That's right. It should be the decimating abyss organization colluding with the flame devil world to act together, causing us to be attacked from both front and back. It's not just Turbid Wave Pavilion's Pavilion Lord and Jade Sea City's City Lord song. The Lord of the Heavenly Thunder Hall also hurried over to the East Sea. Also, great waves have also arisen over at the Earth domain. Our clan and Infinite Boundless Mountain have joined hands to suppress them." Fang Zhuan narrated the events that had transpired at Clear Concealed Lake this time. While it seemed like a sudden incident at Clear Concealed Lake, it was actually very widespread. Over at Clear Concealed Lake, after urgent communication, it was finally decided that the Sacred Sun clan's Huang Su would come over with the Great Sun, heaven-measuring ruler. Yen Zhaoga raised his brows slightly. "Then where is he?" Fang Zhuan's expression turned somewhat solemn. The Devil Saint reappeared, intercepting Huang Su and the Great Sun heaven-measuring ruler. Yen Zhaoga raised his head slightly. The Devil Saint, in the current 8 extremities world, there were a total of 6 martial saints whose cultivation bases could be confirmed and were known to all. The Sacred Sun clan's Grand Elder, the East Coming Martial Saint, Great Sun Rising East Huangguanglia, the Lord of Jade Sea City, the Jade Sea Martial Saint, Boundless Waves Boundless Song Wuliam, the Lord of Turbid Wave Pavilion, the Roiling Cloud Martial Saint, Turbid Wave Roiling Cloud, and Qing Lin, the Lord of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, the Green Thunder Martial Saint, 8 Directional Shocking Thunder, Shun Li, as well as the Sectless Painting Saint and Devil Saint. Of them, the Painting Saint, Old Man Mo, was currently the oldest and most senior expert who was confirmed to still be alive. When Broad Creed Mountains, exalted heaven shaker Zhan Donga, and the heaven diviner Zhan Shilo had still been alive that year, Old Man Mo's name had already spread far and wide, all the way till now. This old man usually resided beyond the seas, unconcerned with worldly affairs, uninvolved in disputes. Most of the time, people were completely unable to sense his existence at all. It was only when the invasion of the Flame Devil world was rather urgent that this old man would appear, aiding the other human experts in repelling the invading Flame Devils. Comparatively speaking, Old Man Mo stood aloof from worldly affairs, with Broad Creed Mountain, the Sacred Sun Clan, and the other major powers not daring to offend him lightly. Meanwhile, the Devil Saint Yuan Tian was different. His personality was unruly, yet his cultivation base was also high, his destructive power extremely great. His relationship with the 6 great sacred grounds was extremely bad, his way of doing things also being very unruly and temperamental, hard to understand, giving everyone a headache. Yen Zhaoge had once secretly analyzed the descriptions of those involved or bystanders after the Devil Saint had clashed with others, discovering that the Devil Saint Yuan Tian had most likely obtained some legacies left behind after the Great Calamity, gradually forming his current martial arts. Tracing back to its source, it seemed to have the shadow of the impermanent devil sect of before the Great Calamity. Is the Devil Saint Yuan Tian related to the Decimating Abyss? Or was it that the Decimating Abyss was single-handedly founded by Yuan Tian? Yen Zhaoge smacked his lips. From what I remember, Yuan Tian still likes to act alone, doing things straightforwardly. Fang Zhuan said, "For what reason Yuan Tian helped the Decimating Abyss to obstruct Huang Su and the Great Sun Heaven-measuring ruler, this is still not something that can be determined. However, to be cautious, it is still better not to treat it as a coincidence. We have to guard against Yuan Tian making a move again next time." Yen Zhaoge nodded. Second apprentice uncle is right. Fang Zhuan said, "This matter will temporarily come to an end here. The aftermath of Clear Concealed Lake should still be left to Turbid Wave Pavilion to handle. Speaking of it, their losses this time were the greatest. Of their 2 elders, one was a spy, finally being executed, while the other died in battle." Shaking his head, Fang Zhuan continued, "Regarding the Decimating Abyss and the 9 underworlds, there are still many things that need to be slowly discussed. Let us first return to the mountain now." Yen Zhaoge nodded in agreement. "I understand." Fang Zhuan suddenly laughed. "When we return this time, the clan will definitely reward you heavily once more. I originally still said that you wouldn't need more than 10 years, just a few years. When the world looks at you, Zhaoge, they will no longer just regard you as junior apprentice brother Yan's son, instead valuing you as a person. But I never thought that I would still have underestimated you. From today onwards, your name is already known by all under the heavens, known by everyone. It will be 515 soon. I hope that I can continue charging towards the 515 red packet rankings. On the 15th of May, the Reign of Red Packets will be able to reward the readers as well as publicize my works. Being together is also love. I will definitely do my best." To be continued. Chapter 200. Towards Fang Zhuan's praise, Yen Zhaoge smiled, saying, "Second apprentice uncle really overpraises me, praising me till I'm almost embarrassed." Fang Zhuan shook his head. "You can accept it." After gathering the other Broad Creed Mountain martial practitioners, they immediately left the Lake Domain, returning to the Heaven Domain. Although they had come to an agreement on the issue of dealing with the Decimating Abyss organization and had joined hands to deal with the enemy during the incident at Clear Concealed Lake. However, now that the Battle of Clear Concealed Lake had concluded, the contest with the Decimating Abyss organization had temporarily come to an end. Broad Creed Mountain was still Broad Creed Mountain, and the Sacred Sun Clan was still the Sacred Sun Clan. Yen Zhaoge and Fang Zhuan's group returned to the Heaven Domain from the Lake Domain, still via that route of the Earth Domain. Although it was very likely that the Decimating Abyss lair was here after the previous great battle, and with the several holy lands joining hands to once again suppress the Earth Domain, it was currently still safe. On the other hand, if one didn't take this route to return to the Tianyuan region from the Lake region, they would have to pass through the Fire region. With Huang Guanglia still in seclusion, and the Sacred Sun Clan having suffered a great defeat in the Battle of the Eastern Tang, If Meng did not win the Extreme crown in the third Extreme bout, it would be fine for Yan Zhaoge, Fang Juan, and the others to directly trample over them from the fire domain. However, now that the Sacred Sun clan had 2 sacred artifacts in their hands, while they did not counterattack, the situation was also not that bad. If Yan Zhaoge and Fang Juan wanted to continue traversing the fire domain, they would have to face their opponent's attacks. It wasn't just broad Creed Mountain. Shan Sherwing was also leading Infinite Boundless Mountains group back to the mountain domain, similarly passing through the earth domain, and not the fire domain. And on the other side, the people of the Heavenly Thunder Hall were similarly returning to the thunder domain via the earth domain. Otherwise, they would have to make use of the water domain. Of course, the Heavenly Thunder Hall would not be traveling together with broad Creed Mountain and Infinite Boundless Mountain. Yan Zhaoge, Su Fei, and Sikong Qing looked over at Infinite Boundless Mountain's side, then looked over at their side, feeling a little uncomfortable within their hearts. They then rushed to the lake region, not counting the people surrounding the decimating abyss. When they participated in the Heavenly Connection meet, there were only 3 people from the younger generation who went, and when they returned, there were still 3 of them. Over at Infinite Boundless Mountain's side, things were rather bleak, having consecutively lost 2 of their direct disciples, Lu Shengfeng and Zhao Hao. Xiao Yu and Ji Hanru were both heavily injured. Of the upper echelon martial practitioners, Turbid Wave Pavilion's losses this time were comparatively the heaviest. As for the younger generation disciples, Infinite Boundless Mountain's backbone had been directly smashed to the ground this time, with no one to reason with. Comparatively speaking, the Thunder Domain's Heavenly Thunder Hall was also in a gloomy state in this regard. The oldest of them, Xia Zi, who was only a step away from the Heavenly Connection stage, had perished. Chun Lin, whose strength had mostly rested on the 2 ghost wolves, had been turned into a meat cushion by Yan Zhaoge's Pan Pan. Additionally, Lin Zhou had been heavily injured by Yan Zhaoge earlier, with Yan Shan's right arm, which was proficient in using the sword, having been chopped off by Yan Zhaoge. The younger generation of the Thunder Domain had also experienced a rare setback. They passed through the Earth Domain and arrived at the border of the Mountain Domain, Heaven Domain, and Earth Domain. The people of the 2 holy lands bid each other farewell and returned to their respective sections. Fang Juan and the others brought Yan Zhaoge and the others back to Broad Creed Mountain. Most of the others first dispersed, with Yan Zhaoge following Fang Juan, as the 2 went to meet the old clan chief, Yuan Zhengfeng. In the main hall of the sect, Yuan Zhengfeng sat on the main seat and was already waiting there. On either side of him, next were Yan Di, Shi Tai, and the clan's 2 grand elders. Fang Juan and Yan Zhaoge greeted Yuan Zhengfeng, and the others, unlike the last time when Yan Zhaoge had come to meet the clan chief. Fang Juan did not take a seat, instead standing where he was. He first reported to Yuan Zhengfeng the complete sequence of events that had occurred in Clear Concealed Lake. Yuan Zhengfeng and the others had already seen Fang Juan's report earlier, but still patiently listened to Fang Juan's narration now. Fang Juan's words were clear and logical, objective and fair, even though he still had some doubts about himself. He didn't add any subjective judgment. He just listed out all the information he knew objectively. After he had finished, Yuan Zhengfeng nodded slowly, not in a hurry to say anything, instead looking at Yan Zhaoge. Zhaoge, you should speak as well. Yan Zhaoge nodded, like Fang Juan. He also narrated his experiences after having entered the Devilish Domain Grand Formation. Other than a few minor details that were slightly concealed, he reported them all truthfully, including how he had previously comprehended the concept of the Eye of the Thunder Emperor, absorbing its essence, and rising from the early Xiantian stage to the mid-Xiantian stage. It also included how he had analyzed the Devilish Domain Grand Formation. thereby relying on the power of the eye of the Thunder Emperor to break the formation. After hearing it all, Yuan Zhengfeng said, "Zhaoge, you did very well this time. Extremely well." Yan Zhaoge answered, "I was still somewhat lucky. If I could have analyzed that devilish domain grand formation more thoroughly, it might have been a little easier. Especially not having to watch Jade Sea City's senior brother Yi and Turbid Wave Pavilion's junior sister Zhang be tormented by that bastard Lu Shengfeng." On Shi Tai's stern face, a rare hint of gentleness could be seen. "You have already done very well. First, not speaking of ability, charging into the core of the devilish domain as a martial scholar, attempting to stop the descent of the 9 underworlds. Just this boldness and courage alone is already very hard to come by. Especially when it was not just a moment of bravery, but that you had the ability to back it up." Opposite Shi Tai and Yen Di, the 2 grand elders similarly nodded slightly. "That's right. You did very well this time." At this time, Yen Di instead didn't say anything, just smiling as he looked at Yan Zhaoge. Yan Zhaoge could clearly see an extremely rare smile on his father's face. That was clearly a rather proud and smug smile, as though he was silently showing off that he had such an outstanding descendant. At Yen Di's current age and status, wanting to see him reveal such an expression in front of others would really be as hard as ascending to the heavens. Yan Zhaoge expressed, "Living long." On the main seat, Yuan Zhengfeng was clearly also in an extremely good mood. The old man suddenly resembled a naughty child as he tilted his head and glanced at Yan Zhaoge. Yan Zhaoge was baffled by his gaze before he heard Yuan Zhengfeng say, "Zhaoge, this old man is feeling a bit of a headache now. The speed at which you have accomplished merits is too fast, and each merit is greater than the last. The clan doesn't even know what to reward you with. The reward is too light, isn't it? Not suitable and unfair to you. Also going against our clan's principle of fairness in rewards and punishments. But conversely, this little bit of wealth of our clan will very quickly be emptied out by you, with no more rewards to be awarded." Yuan Zhengfeng was not someone with a stern personality. On the contrary, the old man was very easygoing, teasing a junior like this when he was in a good mood. However, this did not affect his authority. The authority of the old chief of Broad Creed Mountain had never been established through a straight face. If there really were people who didn't know the immensity of the heavens and the immensity of the earth, Yuan Zhengfeng would let them know why he was known as the heaven-equaling hand. Yan Zhaoge more or less understood Yuan Zhengfeng. Hearing his words, he licked his lips and smiled. "Grand Master, just give as you see fit. You have always been generous. You definitely won't treat me unfairly." Yuan Zhengfeng smiled, pointing at Yan Zhaoge. "You are." He gazed at Shi Tai, who nodded before looking at Yan Zhaoge, saying, "The reward for you is a special privilege. From today onwards, you can act as you please without reporting anything you encounter, only having to report it afterwards. You can act decisively before the matter, handling it on your own, also mobilizing the clan's resources to assist you." Shi Tai paused for a moment before saying, "Anything." Yan Zhaoge let out a long breath. In the entire history of Broad Creed Mountain, from the founding of the clan till now, there had never been a martial scholar who had obtained this privilege. It's going to be 515 soon. I hope that I can continue charging towards the 515 red packet rankings. On the 15th of May, the reign of red packets will be able to reward the readers and promote my works. Being together is also love. I will definitely do my best. To be continued. Chapter 201. There was no need to ask for instructions and only needed to report afterwards. At the same time, he could mobilize the sect's resources to help. Generally speaking, this was the authority of a first-seat elder of Broad Creed Mountain. Strictly speaking, some of the head elders did not have such great authority, or it could be said that they only had such authority in certain areas or places. For example, the East Continent elders had such authority in the East Heaven Continent, but outside of the East Heaven Continent, it would not be as convenient. In the history of Broad Creed Mountain, there had never been a first seat elder of the martial scholar realm. So naturally, there had never been a martial scholar who had obtained such authority. Yen Zhaoge had set a precedent. This reward was for him to successfully break the devilish domain grand formation and prevent the 9 underworlds from descending. Therefore, from a certain perspective, this reward was not because of Yen Zhaoge's outstanding talent and potential in the martial Tao as a junior disciple. This reward was actually an acknowledgement of Yen Zhaoge's own abilities, an acknowledgement of his ability to deal with various unexpected and major incidents. To a certain extent, it was also due to the battle of the Eastern Tang and the giant spirit magnetite vein at Cloud Portent Mountain, as well as the accumulation of Yen Zhaoge's usual impressive performance in the Battle of Clear Concealed Lake, this time that the clan's trust in his abilities had risen to a whole new level. Therefore, this reward, which had never appeared before in history, had been created. After the Battle of Clear Concealed Lake, Yen Zhaoge's name had truly shaken the world, not as the son of Broad Creed Mountain's first seat elder, Yen Wudi, nor as a disciple of the younger generation. Although he was young, he was already capable of stirring up the world. Within Broad Creed Mountain, they had already adjusted their view of Yen Zhaoge, and this time, the higher echelon bigwigs of Broad Creed Mountain raised Yen Zhaoge's evaluation even further. Giving him greater authority and freedom meant more trust in Yen Zhaoge's abilities, at the same time also representing greater responsibilities in the future. Yen Zhaoge had already been mentally prepared for this, although he had the right to make decisions on the spot. However, this did not mean that they were completely absolved of responsibility. If they committed a grave mistake, they would still have to take responsibility. Just like Elder Qin of the East Continent, in principle, what happened in the East Heaven Continent? He could make a decision with a single word. In fact, this was true for most things. However, Elder Qin could make the decision on whether or not to allow Feng Yunsheng to stay, but if the result was a big mess, he would have to take full responsibility. Yen Zhaoge was very open-minded about this. While enjoying power, he also had to shoulder responsibility. I'm young and inexperienced, so I'm afraid that I'll be unable to live up to their expectations. Granting me such a privilege, I will do my best. Yen Zhaoge bowed solemnly towards Yuan Zhengfeng. Yuan Zhengfeng smiled and said, "Zhaoge is so serious. How long has it been since I last saw you? Relax, this is a reward for you, not an immediate increase in your burden. For now, the most important thing for you is to focus on training." Yuan Zhengfeng exclaimed in admiration. Although there were many fortuitous encounters, the speed of your cultivation progress is indeed breathtaking. In the past, you spent too much time on miscellaneous studies. Now, it seems that you didn't throw them away, and your martial arts cultivation has also improved. Yen Zhaoge's expression did not change, found some balance. However, in terms of miscellaneous studies, most of the time, I'm actually living off what I already have. By the side, Fang Zhuan smiled. You might as well say that it's due to accumulation. Everyone laughed. Yuan Zhengfeng thought of something. Speaking of miscellaneous studies, Zhaoge, you've researched quite a bit into ancient characters and are also very interested in the legacies left behind after the Great Calamity. From what this old man knows, you've also personally excavated quite a few legacies. Yen Zhaoge nodded. Yes, Grand Master. He looked at Yuan Zhengfeng. Since the other party had asked this, there was most likely more to come. Could it be that the clan had unearthed a legacy of the Great Calamity that no one had discovered before? If that was the case, Yen Zhaoge would indeed be a little interested. Yuan Zhengfeng said, "In the great desert of the Wind Domain, someone of the clan discovered a legacy, very likely something that existed before the Great Calamity, left behind after. However, the diagrams of the legacy are extremely strange and hard to decipher, not understanding their meaning. The Wind Domain was to the west of the Heaven Domain, also bordering the Mountain Domain and the Fire Domain. Within its borders were thousands of li of yellow sand, tall mountains and rivers, its geographical environment rather harsh, with many martial scholars and even martial grandmasters finding it hard to endure natural disasters. In the boundless Great Desert, if one were to be trapped within, it was even more possible for them to lose their sense of direction, finally perishing within the sea of sand, never to return. However, while the natural conditions were extremely harsh, the vast, boundless Wind Domain, other than dangerous natural disasters, also contained many rare treasures and resources. After the destruction of the Wind Domain's sacred ground, Black Nightmare Mountain, Broad Creed Mountain, the Sacred Sun Clan, and Infinite Boundless Mountain had all advanced into the Wind Domain, each occupying their own territory. Broad Creed Mountain had originally held the greatest advantage, virtually monopolizing it. However, following the invasion of the Flame Devils that year, a great change had occurred. Broad Creed Mountain had declined from its peak, also losing most of its territory in the Wind Domain, especially during that conservative period when they had concealed their strength and bided their time. They had been forced to retreat step by step. And in the time that the Sacred Sun Clan had risen to become the current #1 sacred ground, they had seized a large amount of territory in the Wind Domain. Currently, more than half of the Wind Domain was also controlled by the Sacred Sun Clan. Broad Creed Mountain and Infinite Boundless Mountain both had a foot in the Wind Domain, and the areas where the three clans intersected had always been filled with conflict. In the previous battle of the Eastern Tang, Broad Creed Mountain had held the upper hand. Other than counterattacking into the territory of the Fire Domain, they had also expanded their territory in the Wind Domain, their authority and area of control greatly increasing. Hearing that it was indeed a relic left behind from the Great Calamity, Yan Zhaoge couldn't help but feel even more interested. Yuan Zhengfeng looked at a grand elder of Broad Creed Mountain below him, an old lady of the same generation as him, junior apprentice sister. He let Zhaoge look through it together and see if there are any gains. The old lady elder, he nodded, taking out a crystal and opening it on her hand. Yan Zhaoge took the crystal, infusing his aura chi within. As his aura chi shook, light instantly shot out from the surface of the crystal. The light was projected in midair, forming an illusory scene of light. The all-encompassing black storm swept along the sea of sand below. The natural conditions of many places in the Wind Domain were still as unfriendly as ever. On the surface of the desert before them, something could vaguely be seen resembling a stone pillar. The half of the stone pillar that was exposed outside of the yellow sand was uneven, with signs of it having been damaged. And on the surface of the stone pillar, majestic yet profound and complex patterns were inscribed. Looking at those patterns, one could vaguely feel the wonders within, but could not understand them, unable to understand their meaning. Everyone here, other than Yan Zhaoge, had already seen it more than once. Still, looking at it now, they still felt it to be captivating. After seeing the stone pillar within the illusory scene of light, Yan Zhaoge's pupils instantly dilated. Fuck! Yan Zhaoge nearly let out a curse. This is the pillar of the divine palace from back then. Yan Zhaoge sucked in a deep breath. It's going to be 515 soon. I hope that I can continue attacking the 515 red packet rankings. On the 15th of May, the reign of red packets will be able to reward the readers as well as publicize my work. Being together is also love. I will definitely do my best to update it. To be continued. P.S. Thanks to Piao Hong of the Are people who ask about gender retarded? Alliance. And thanks to everyone else who has tipped this book, subscribed to this book, and voted for this book. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 202. Looking at that half-broken stone pillar, Yen Zhaoga's heart surged with turbulent seas. Yen Zhaoga had always kept the Great Calamity in mind. Having a chance to come into contact with the remnants of the Great Calamity was something that he was extremely interested in. However, as far as he knew, relics related to the Divine Palace had virtually never appeared in the Eight Extremities world up until now. The only possibility was that he was currently in the broad Creed Mountains inheritance, which was vaguely related to the Divine Palace. However, it had yet to be confirmed. Other than that, according to the information that Yen Zhaoga currently possessed, ever since the Great Calamity, there had been no more legacies in the Eight Extremities world that had anything to do with the Divine Palace. The broken stone pillar that appeared in the Desert of the Wind region was the remnant of a broken pillar from the Divine Palace in the past. This caused Yen Zhaoga's heart to suddenly blaze with passion. He had always wanted to investigate the specific situation of the Great Calamity. As compared to the other relics, the Divine Palace relics were much more valuable. Although the stone pillars were in ruins, compared to the other ruins, they probably had more clues and information. After staring earnestly at the stone pillar within the illusory scene for a moment, Yen Zhaoga said to Yuan Zhengfeng and the others, the patterns are indeed complex and ancient. Wanting to decipher them would be very difficult. However, I have some ideas, but I don't dare to say how confident I am. Can I bring the stone pillars back? Now that I have the real thing in hand, the chances of deciphering it will be higher if I analyze it carefully. Elder, he shook his head slightly. You should have some understanding of the Wind region's Great Western Desert. The situation there is very complicated. Even martial saints can't do as they please. She was also slightly vexed. That stone pillar is entangled with the natural power of the Great Western Desert, so it's hard to take it out. We can only stay where we are. The corner of Yen Zhaoga's mouth twitched slightly. Did this mean that if he wanted to see the stone pillars, he would have to personally make a trip to the desert to eat sand? Yuan Zhengfeng said, "It's good that you have an idea. There's no rush. This is the time when the black nightmare storm of the Great Western Desert is at its fiercest. Even a martial saint would find it hard to go in. Let's wait a few months for the black nightmare storm to weaken before entering. That relic is one with the Great Western Desert, so it's hard to excavate and move it. But even if we can't dig it out, it's the same for others. At the same time, we don't have to worry about being destroyed by others." The old clan chief looked at Yen Zhaoga. "There is also no need for Zhaoga to be in too much of a rush. Just keep this matter in mind." Yen Zhaoga nodded, ceasing his infusion of Orochi. The illusion of light and shadow dissipated. Looking at the stone pillar gradually disappearing before his eyes, Yen Zhaoga's gaze was slightly deep and distant. To outsiders, this was a relic of the Great Calamity that was hard to decipher and understand. But to him, this was the key to unraveling the mystery. It was a plan for his future, and at the same time, it could be an opportunity. Yen Zhaoga narrowed his eyes. Perhaps it was not completely impossible to bring the stone pillar out of the Great Western Desert. But just as Yuan Zhengfeng said, there was no rush at the moment. A natural disaster, like the Black Nightmare Storm, was not something that a human could withstand. Who knew how many martial grandmasters had been ripped to shreds by the Black Nightmare Storm? In the past, the Wind Domain's sacred ground, Black Nightmare Mountain, had always hoped to completely control the Great Western Desert, as well as the many natural disasters there. However, even up until their demise, they had never truly managed to do so. Broad Creed Mountain, the Sacred Sun Clan, and Infinite Boundless Mountain currently divided up the territory of the Wind Domain, actually all occupying areas that could be developed. Barren lands like the Great Western Desert were merely controlled in the outer regions. To put it bluntly, the Great Western Desert. That was completely not a place for people to stay in. Just like the current land of death, it was a land of great danger. However, what was worth rejoicing was that the natural disasters of the Great Western Desert were closely related to the local climate and seasons. For example, that terrifying black nightmare storm had a cycle of roughly half a year, being strong at times and weak at others. When the storm weakened, martial practitioners could make use of the chance to enter the depths of the Great Western Desert. Of course, the dangers and tribulations of the Great Western Desert were not just limited to the Black Nightmare Storm. Yen Zhaoge said, "I will first observe the patterns inscribed of light, attempting to deduce the meaning within. When the storm has weakened, I will then enter." Yuan Zhengfeng nodded. "That is how it should be. Grand Master." Yen Zhaoge hesitated for a moment before asking, "For what reason was Elder Wang roped in and corroded by the decimating abyss?" Elder Wang was the highest known member of the decimating abyss in Broad Creed Mountain, who had sent the message from the Heavenly Thunder Hall. He was an experienced great grandmaster who was of the same generation as Yuan Zhengfeng, Elder He, and the others. He had always been highly respected. Yuan Zhengfeng and the others were all silent for a moment, regretful looks appearing on their faces. Yuan Zhengfeng did not speak, while Elder He answered Yen Zhaoge's question. "Senior apprentice Brother Wang is getting old," a simple, obscure sentence, but Yen Zhaoge still understood the meaning within. Old, with no hope of breaking through, his lifespan nearing its end. Elder Wang was already very old, his lifespan nearing its end relative to his current cultivation base. And if he wanted to continue raising his cultivation base, the chances of that were slim. Yen Zhaoge sighed, inwardly, feeling pity for Elder Wang. At the same time, his heart also rose as he unconsciously raised his head to look ahead. There, Yuan Zhengfeng sat on a chair with a calm expression on his face. While he had long since known that Yuan Zhengfeng's will was strong, his personality open-minded, and optimistic despite his old age, Yen Zhaoge still couldn't help but feel worried. Because of his old injuries that year, Yuan Zhengfeng had been a transcending mortality martial grandmaster for many years, standing at the peak of all martial grandmasters. However, he had always been a paper-thin distance away from the martial saint realm. It must be known that when Yuan Zhengfeng had become a transcending mortality martial grandmaster that year, he had done so even earlier than Huang, Guanglia, and Qinglin, and the others. In the end, he had remained in the transcending mortality martial grandmaster realm for many years, watching those who had lagged behind him back, then surpass him one by one. The reason was not that he had run out of ideas, but that he was bound by external chains. On the other hand, over at the Sacred Sun Clan, Huang Guanglia had entered secluded cultivation once more in search of a breakthrough, giving Yuan Zhengfeng even more pressure. No one knew how much anxiety and unwillingness Yuan Zhengfeng was feeling, how much pressure he was bearing. Moreover, because of his old injuries that year, Yuan Zhengfeng's lifespan was also shorter than that of other transcending mortality martial grandmasters. While thinking like this was a little offensive to his grandmaster, excluding emotional factors, Yen Zhaoge had no choice but to consider this problem. For someone with a strong will like Yuan Zhengfeng, as soon as he lost control of his mental state, he would be far more stubborn and extreme than ordinary people. In truth, after understanding that the various sacred grounds also had people who had joined the decimating abyss and the 9 underworlds other than Broad Creed Mountain, there were many who were secretly worried about Yuan Zhengfeng. Raising his head to look at Yuan Zhengfeng, meeting the old man's gaze, Yen Zhaoge saw that the other party's gaze was clear and intelligent, not turbid in the least, resembling that of a child. Yuan Zhengfeng seemed to know what Yan Zhaoge was thinking as he smiled. It would be a lie to say that I'm not anxious. Everyone under the heavens knows that this old man is under immense pressure. But at least for now, this old man can still bear it. It's going to be 515 soon. I hope that I can continue attacking the 515 red packet rankings. On the 15th of May, the reign of red packets will be able to reward the readers as well as publicize my works. Being together is also love. I will definitely do my best. To be continued. Chapter 203. Looking at Yuan Zhengfeng. Yan Zhaoge also revealed a smile. I was rash. Please punish me, Grand Master. Yuan Zhengfeng smiled, waving his hands. It's fine. The problems revealed in the incident of Clear Concealed Lake this time are indeed shocking. The old man sighed towards the heavens. The corruption of the 9 underworlds is pervasive and hidden, hard to guard against. Before this, we had actually already apprehended some spies, but their cultivation bases were all rather low, not like senior apprentice brother Wang this time. Yan Zhaoge nodded, not speaking. Under such circumstances, whatever he said would not be appropriate. Elder Wang was of the same generation as Yuan Zhengfeng, having experienced broad Creed Mountain's darkest period of concealment and biding their time together. Struggling together, they had watched as broad Creed Mountain gradually regained its vitality. Below Yuan Zhengfeng, the 2 grand elders were also silent. They were of the same generation as Elder Wang, having been friends for many years. Yan Zhaoge did not ask how Elder Wang was doing now. Having been controlled before leaving Broad Creed Mountain, unable to come into contact with the devilish chi in the depths of the earth domain, he should not have fallen to the dark side. However, if the devilish intent within his heart was already too strong, it would similarly be hard to turn back. It was not something that could be resolved with just a few simple words of repentance. When the devilish intent within a person's heart grew to a certain extent, even if he did not fall to the dark side, even if he looked no different from how he usually did, he would actually already be lost and hard to turn back. Like a barrel of gunpowder that could explode at any time, it would definitely explode. It was just a matter of time. Looking at the expressions of Yuan Zhengfeng and Elder He, as well as them not mentioning anything about how they had dealt with Elder Wang, Yan Zhaoge knew that Elder Wang's situation was definitely not optimistic, most likely already having accumulated too much. Under such circumstances, the best outcome for him would be to be imprisoned in the heaven-sealing gorge. From a certain perspective, that would actually be a rather soft-hearted decision, or perhaps it would be just in case. Hopefully, Elder Wang would still be able to turn back. While Yan Zhaoge's current position was no longer that of an ordinary disciple of the younger generation, and Yuan Zhengfeng and the others also valued his opinion, Yan Zhaoge chose not to interfere in how Elder Wang would be dealt with, leaving the Great Hall. Following behind his father, Yan Zhaoge asked via sound transmission with his Orachi, "Do you have the pill formula now?" Yan Di answered, "After receiving the pill formula that you sent back, I have been constantly analyzing it over the past few days. Now, I am already 80 to 90% confident." Yan Zhaoge nodded. It wasn't easy to concoct the heaven-reversing divine pill. Even with his current level of alchemy, coupled with his current cultivation level, he didn't dare to say he was completely confident. However, time waits for no man. Whether it was the Sacred Sun Clan, the 9 underworlds decimating abyss, or the Flame Devil world, all of them brought immense pressure to Broad Creed Mountain and Yuan Zhengfeng. Yan Zhaoge currently valued the heaven-returning divine pill more in terms of its own effects rather than what would come after it had been concocted. To bring merit to his father, when the nest is overturned, it is hard for eggs to remain intact. His Grand Master Yuan Zhengfeng, breaking through the barrier, transcending mortality, and entering sainthood, stepping into the martial saint realm, was of great significance to the entire broad Creed Mountain. As for the other corresponding benefits, they were all attached to this point of value. Alchemy, the earlier one starts, the better. Because the heaven-reversing immortal pills refining method is very special, it needs to be repeated 9 times. It would take a lot of time to melt it down each time. If there were any failures along the way, the entire process would have to start all over again. Therefore, concocting the heaven-reversing divine pill was a matter that consumed a lot of time and effort. If one's luck was bad, the method of concocting it would be inappropriate. Even if the medicinal ingredients were all present, it wouldn't be unusual for it to take more than 10 years. And with the current situation, there wasn't much time left for Broad Creed Mountain and Yuan Zhongfeng. Yan Di looked at Yan Zhaoge. In the days to come, I will mainly focus on alchemy. Your cultivation will have to depend on your own effort. Yan Zhaoge nodded. You can rest easy. I won't slack off. Yan Di raised his head and thought for a moment. The clan previously rewarded you with the right to freely enter the 1st to 3rd levels of the martial repository, at the same time also giving you a chance to enter the 4th level. This is allowing you to come into contact with the second half of the Clear Chi Profound art in advance. As for our clan's 3 supreme martial arts, do you have your own rules for them? The Clear Chi Profound art was the foundation of Broad Creed Mountain's lineage. Becoming a core, direct disciple would be able to cultivate in the first half at the martial scholar realm, with the rest having to wait until they reached the martial grandmaster realm. As for the second half, it was the most important, its conditions even harsher. Up until now, those who had been able to come into contact with it at the martial scholar realm from ancient times until now had only been Zhan Dongge, Yan Di, and Yan Zhaoge. As for Broad Creed Mountain's 3 supreme martial arts, they were the supreme martial arts of Broad Creed Mountain that had been passed down through the generations, representing the current highest achievements of Broad Creed Mountain's martial Tao, even surpassing the 8 extreme arts. At the same time, they were also one of the greatest achievements of the martial civilization since its redevelopment after the Great Calamity. Yan Zhaoge chuckled. Don't mind me. If I were to choose, I intend to learn the heavenly Broad Creed Palm. Broad Creed Mountain's 3 supreme martial arts were the heavenly Broad Creed Palm, the immeasurable heavenly saber, and the limitless heavenly sword. These 3 supreme martial arts were all profound and unfathomable, possessing great power. Only Broad Creed Mountain's most outstanding martial practitioners could cultivate in them. The standards were even stricter than the second half of the Clear Chi Profound art. Even Fu Enshu, whom Yuan Zhongfeng viewed as his own, had only been allowed to cultivate in them after becoming a martial grandmaster and undergoing numerous tests until Yuan Zhongfeng was satisfied. Sure, Tai was an exception. Up until now, he had still not cultivated in the 3 supreme martial arts, instead analyzing the Vajra body a step further, wanting to completely dig out all of its potential. This was due to his personality being a special circumstance that could not be taken into account. As for Yan Di and Fang Zhuan, Yan Di cultivated in the immeasurable heavenly saber, while Fang Zhuan cultivated in the limitless heavenly sword. Hearing Yan Zhaoge's choice, Yan Di smiled. Choosing a supreme martial art to cultivate in, if you want to choose, you should choose the one that is most suitable for you. It's not like the father learning the saber, the son also having to inherit his father's legacy. However, we thought that you would choose the limitless heavenly sword. Yan Zhaoge smiled. Actually, I am very interested in all 3 supreme martial arts, but the one I am most interested in is still the heavenly Broad Creed Palm. Yan Di said, since I allowed you to go up to the 4th level to choose, this is up to you. Father and son returned to Yan Di's residence, chatting for a while before Yan Zhaoge took his leave, with Yan Di continuing to analyze the pill formula of the heaven-returning divine pill. Exiting Yan Di's residence, Yan Zhaoge sucked in a deep breath, taking out that crystal from his bosom. Within was the image of the remains of the stone pillar of the divine palace in the great western desert. Waiting outside, seeing Yen Zhaoge emerge, Ahu hurriedly followed him. Other than him, the massive Pan rushed over even more warmly, looking like he wanted to crush Yen Zhaoge down. This big fella's current size was already comparable to that of an elephant, perhaps even a little larger. Yen Zhaoge naturally stopped him impatiently, patting Pan's big head. "You can already control your own figure now. Such a big figure takes up too much space. Rampaging about within the clan, if you break anything, you yourself might not even realize it." Pan blinked, streams of spiritual chi surging about his body, transforming into white fire and black water that surrounded his body. The next moment, the water and fire dissipated, his body indeed becoming much smaller. Yen Zhaoge nodded satisfactorily before striding off in the direction of the martial repository. The fourth level of the martial repository that he had always been interested in before would finally be able to experience it for himself this time. It's going to be 515 soon. I hope that I can continue charging into the 515 red packet rankings. On the 15th of May, the rain of red packets will be able to reward the readers as well as promote my work. Being together is also love. I will definitely do my best. To be continued. Chapter 204. The martial arts that Ahu was currently cultivating and had long since surpassed the standards of the first or even the second level of the martial repository. However, according to the rules, no matter how close he was to Yen Zhaoge and Yen Di, as long as he was not of Broad Creed Mountain, he could not enter the martial repository. Having long since gotten used to this, Ahu asked Yen Zhaoge, "Young master, approximately how long will you be staying in the martial repository?" Yen Zhaoge thought for a moment. The situation this time is special and will be much longer than before. I should not be able to come out before sunset. Ahu nodded, waving his hands at Yen Zhaoge. "Young master, then you do what you need to do. I'll find a place to play, and I'll come back here to wait for you at sunset." Yen Zhaoge similarly waved his hands out of habit. "And find a cool cave to hide in." Although he was teasing Ahu, Yen Zhaoge knew that this seemingly carefree man had most likely gone to find a place to cultivate. Ahu's identity, as well as his often shameless behavior of always following Yen Zhaoge around, would easily cause others to look down on him. But actually, Ahu's age was not even 30, being younger than the others, roughly around the same as Lu Shengfeng and Xie Yuchan. Being able to reach such a cultivation realm at this age, other than his shocking talent, this big guy was more diligent in his cultivation than most people. Yen Zhaoge entered the first level of the martial repository. At this moment, there were quite a few people, all of them younger Broad Creed Mountain disciples who had entered the clan rather late. Seeing Yen Zhaoge, they were all stunned before bowing to him together. "Greetings, senior apprentice brother, Yen." To these youths, while Yen Zhaoge was of the same generation as them, however, he was already a figure of legend. Seeing Yen Zhaoge, they were even more nervous than seeing many of the clan's elders. Yen Zhaoge smiled and nodded at them, his gaze sweeping the area as he suddenly saw a familiar face. Feng Yunsheng was dressed in a white robe. She wore a blue robe with black borders, dressed in a Broad Creed Mountain Corps' direct disciple attire. Beside her followed a teenager, currently staring blankly at Yen Zhaoge. It was Han Long and Ying Longtu. Ying Longtu still looked rather dazed, but seemed to recognize Yen Zhaoge. Feng Yunsheng smiled. "Longtu, didn't you always ask me where senior apprentice brother Yen went? It's right in front of you." Ying Longtu gave a simple smile. Senior apprentice brother Yen." Yen Zhaoge smiled, nodding as he walked over. "Not having seen you for over half a year, Dragon too has grown much taller." He turned to look at Feng Yunsheng and said with a smile, The two of you are quite familiar with each other. Feng Yunsheng glanced at Ing Longtu with a slightly strange expression, saying, "It's because we have a common interest." The corners of Yan Zhaoga's mouth also twitched slightly. "You like it, and it can eat a lot." Feng Yunsheng nodded, patting Ing Longtu's shoulder. "Most of the time, I don't dare to light a fire in Broad Creed Mountain, having to go outside to hunt. I'm afraid some of the things on the mountain are going to be eaten to extinction." Yan Zhaoga laughed. "Now that I've returned to the mountain, count me in as well." Feng Yunsheng stared. "You, the lofty Broad Creed young master, a heaven's favored son of the new generation whose fame has spread throughout the world, actually snatching food from weak women and children. How can you bear to do that? Aren't you afraid of ruining your reputation? The two of you can also be considered weak women and children." Yan Zhaoga appraised her, and Ing Longtu shaking his head disdainfully. However, after a few glances, Yan Zhaoga suddenly burst out laughing. "The burden of taking care of Longtu has fallen much on your shoulders. Do you feel like a mother now?" "Longtu, what do you call her?" Without waiting for Feng Yunsheng to retort, Long Chen asked. Not waiting for Feng Yunsheng to retort, Yan Zhaoga asked Ing Longtu smilingly. Ing Longtu glanced at Feng Yunsheng rather blankly before answering honestly, "Senior apprentice sister Feng." Yan Zhaoga shook his head repeatedly. "Wrong, wrong. You can call her Mother Yun." Ing Longtu blinked, swiveling his head to stare at Feng Yunsheng. He seemed to really be considering whether he should change the way he addressed her. Even the usually magnanimous Feng Yunsheng felt a little uncomfortable being stared at by this gaze, staring at Yan Zhaoga indignantly. After a moment, she snorted, sending via sound transmission with her Orochi, "Whose family's child is this? Already rather old, still so immature, only knowing how to snatch food from his younger brother all day long. Why do you care so much? It's not like you're snatching milk to eat." "Relaxed." Yan Zhaoga didn't think through his words as he casually retorted. Just having said it, he instantly felt that it was inappropriate. I'm sorry." Feng Yunsheng was stunned, only reacting after a long time, as she couldn't help but look at Yan Zhaoga, amused whilst also exasperated. She instead laughed now, not feeling embarrassed as she chuckled. "I'm really sorry, sir. I've let you down. The season isn't right, and this shop indeed doesn't have this dish. Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice." Yan Zhaoga coughed dryly. It's fine. Don't take it to heart." Luckily, the last few words had been spoken via sound transmission with their Orochi, with others unable to hear them. Otherwise, with so many junior apprentice brothers and sisters by the side, if they heard them, that would really be a little too funny. Exchanging glances, the two tacitly began to change the topic. Feng Yunsheng smiled generously. "It is said that we maidens of extreme Yin, with our martial scholar cultivation bases, can shake the entire world. But at the end of the day, the root of this is still the sacred artifact, the extreme Yin crown. However, it cannot be compared to you, senior apprentice brother Yen, truly using your own strength to reverse the heavens and earth, saving the raging tides." Yan Zhaoga waved his hands. "You overpraise me. There was some luck involved in this." After the matter, I also reflected on it. Yan Zhaoga sighed. Looking back on the entire matter, it was still a little risky. As the saying goes, one only regrets not having enough knowledge when it is time to use it. This time, I felt it rather deeply. Before this, while I had some research on formations, comparatively speaking, it was still only on the surface. In the devilish domain Grand Formation this time, I was still unable to see through many of its principles and operating details. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had to risk my life at the final juncture. As he spoke, Yan Zhaoga shook his head, returning to the mountain this time. Apart from cultivating, I've already decided to put more effort into the Tao of formations, making up for my shortcomings. As he said this, Yan Zhaoge suddenly discovered that Feng Yinsheng was currently looking at him with a strange gaze. Yan Zhaoge lowered his head to look at his clothes, not wearing them inside out. "What does that expression of yours mean?" Yan Zhaoge asked curiously. Feng Yinsheng appraised Yan Zhaoge, saying with a strange tone, "Senior apprentice brother Yan, do you know, the way you said those words with a straight face just now, it was especially arrogant." Huh. Yan Zhaoge was unable to make heads or tails of it. Feng Yinsheng said, "Senior apprentice brother Yan, while I didn't go this time, I also heard that in order to break that devilish domain grand formation, it is not something that can be done just with a sacred artifact fragment. It requires a very high level of attainment in formations, only then being able to accurately grasp the timing of a single breath. Generally speaking, even many martial grandmasters are unable to do so. Now, you say that your attainment in formations is too low and that you still want to continue working on it. This is really..." Feng Yinsheng looked at Yan Zhaoge with a look of disdain on her face. Perhaps she didn't know what the word acting cool meant, but this didn't stop her from despising Yan Zhaoge's actions. Yan Zhaoge was momentarily dazed before he reacted, not knowing whether to laugh or to cry. "Although I rather like acting cool, rather like being in the limelight, rather like showing off in front of others, but I really didn't want to do that just now. This time, I was really very seriously reflecting on myself, being humble, and reflecting on myself. I really want to put in more effort into researching formations, raising my level in this area. It's going to be 515 soon. I hope that I can continue charging towards the 515 red packet rankings. And on the 15th of May, the Reign of Red Packets will be able to reward the readers as well as promote my works. Being together is also love. I will definitely do my best to improve." To be continued. Chapter 205. Yan Zhaoge had a dazed expression on his face. He looked at Feng Yinsheng, the corners of his mouth twitching. "Junior Sister Feng, I am very serious and solemn that I really need to improve my attainments in formations, and I will work hard in this area." A look of surprise appeared on Feng Yinsheng's face as she carefully appraised Yan Zhaoge. After a while, she said rather helplessly, "Senior apprentice brother Yan, wouldn't you be making the others feel even more ashamed? At least right now, I feel like an idiot." Yan Zhaoge was silent for a moment before he suddenly laughed. "Forget it. Anyway, most of the time, it's actually not wrong for you to think this way. Occasionally accusing me is also caused by the impression I left on you. If you really want to say it, it can't be considered as accusing me." Hearing his words, Feng Yinsheng could not help but look at Yan Zhaoge once more, her gaze growing gentler and gentler. Yan Zhaoge's gaze turned towards Ying Longtu by the side, placing his hand on the meridians on Ying Longtu's wrist. After checking for a while, he smiled. "Longtu has improved very quickly." While he seemed a little slow, having received Yan Zhaoge's praise, Ying Longtu smiled happily. Feng Yinsheng also laughed. "The heavenly dipper body is truly powerful. Lanta's speed of improvement has even shocked eldest martial uncle and master." Regarding Ying Longtu's discussion, Yan Zhaoge and Feng Yinsheng did not continue using sound transmissions with their orochi, instead conversing normally. When the other disciples heard this, they looked over curiously. Ying Longtu instantly became the focus of everyone's gazes. While it had only been over half a year since he had returned to Broad Creed Mountain, the talent and potential that Ying Longtu had displayed was really too shocking. As one of the current world's 6 great sacred grounds, Broad Creed Mountain's disciples who were able to enter the sect were all 1 in 10,000. Within Broad Creed Mountain, everyone was outstanding. Perhaps it still couldn't be manifested. only geniuses amongst geniuses like Xue Fei, Lu Wen, Yan Zhaoge, Feng Yunsheng, and Xikong Qing would be able to display their excellence. But actually, in front of Yan Zhaoge and the others, while they seemed mediocre if they were brought to first or second-rate powers other than broad Creed Mountain, they would all be geniuses. But under such an environment, Ing Longtu displayed a rate of improvement that shocked all of the younger generation disciples. He was a child who didn't even seem to be very bright in his daily life. In terms of martial arts cultivation, it was not enough to describe one's progress. 10,000 miles in a day was more appropriate. Even Yuan Zhengfeng was alarmed. This little monster's cultivation speed in the body refinement realm was even faster than that of Yan Di that year. A fellow disciple who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and caught up with the others made the other young disciples feel immense pressure. The reason why Feng Yunsheng often brought Ing Longtu along to look after him, other than taking care of him in his daily life, was also to prevent others from bullying him and boycotting him. This was to prevent people from taking advantage of the fact that he was usually not very smart to secretly set a trap for them. Although Ing Longtu was obedient and studious, he was usually a little lacking in intelligence. Sometimes, if he was secretly misled by someone, he might not even realize that he had caused trouble. Yan Zhaoge surveyed their surroundings, saying calmly, "The Big Dipper body, also known as the 36 acupoints True Dragon body, or the Big Dipper Dragon body. His innate chi and blood are as majestic as dragons and elephants, and his mind is as clear as water and a mirror," Yan Zhaoge said. "As long as it is something related to the chi and blood of the fleshly body, Longtu can virtually accomplish it in a single step equivalent to having cultivated it in the womb. That's why we need to train our flesh and blood. He was probably the strongest at that time. As for other aspects, such as the regulation of breath, the accumulation of internal chi, and so on, he also has a huge advantage. His innate capital is strong, and he is one of the top in the world." Yan Zhaoge stroked his lower chin. "Therefore, in the early stages of cultivating in the body refinement realm, his rate of improvement is very fast. That is to be expected." Feng Yunsheng nodded. A martial artist's body refinement realm consisted of the 3 realms of physical body, meridian opening, and qi conducting. Basically, it was related to qi, blood, muscles, and bones. Starting from the early stage of the physical body martial artist, one had to first pursue the strength of one's bones and flesh. One had to train all the muscles in one's body to be full and powerful so that one's strength and flexibility would be stronger than that of a normal person. Then, in the mid-fleshly body realm, one had to train one's muscles and bones to be tough, tempering one's body a step further, increasing the explosive power of one's muscles and meridians. In the late fleshly body realm, one's bones and flesh would resonate together. This would be the first time one would be able to train in one's bones. The hardness and tenacity of one's bones would both increase greatly, and one's flexibility and strength would also rise to a whole new level. Then, one would begin to step through the first major threshold of martial cultivation, advancing towards the meridian opening realm. Successfully opening the meridians in one's body, one would be considered to have stepped into the early meridian opening realm. Afterwards, unceasingly strengthening and expanding the meridians, roughly 3 times that of the initial stage, with this as the boundary, one could be said to be in the mid-meridian opening realm. Finally, when all the meridians in one's body had been opened, it indicated that one had reached the late meridian opening realm, establishing a solid foundation for further cultivation. Late meridian opening realm martial artists could begin cultivating qi, successfully cultivating a mouthful of inner qi. Without dissipating, one could be called a qi-directing martial artist. In the early qi-directing realm, one's blood and qi were vigorous and vigorous. Through breathing in and out, one's qi and blood circulation was accelerated and regulated. The mid-qi directing realm was a very important stage, opening up the Dantian's qi ocean, greatly strengthening one's inner qi. The late qi directing realm was also known as the realm of washing the marrows of the bones. For the first time, a martial artist would cultivate their martial arts to the marrow within their bones. Through the regulation of the qi and blood, the interior and exterior becoming one, the inner qi penetrating deep into the marrow, thus achieving the initial effect of being reborn and reborn. Its characteristic was that the inner qi entered the bones, the sound of thunder washing the marrows. Finally, the 10th level was known as entering the intricate realm, where one would be able to look within, gradually grasping the internal state of one's body, being able to feel the acupoints of one's entire body. Having reached this stage, the cultivation of a body refinement martial artist had reached the peak, beginning to attempt to cultivate their inner qi into aura qi. As soon as their aura qi was formed, they would be considered to have stepped into the martial scholar realm. Yan Zhaoge patted Ing Longtu's shoulder. To Longtu, of the 10 levels of the body refinement realm, there are only the 7th to 8th levels, opening up the Dantian's qi ocean, as well as the 9th to 10th levels, entering the intricate realm. These two stages require time and serious cultivation, while the other stages can be easily passed just by playing around. At this point, Yan Zhaoge also felt a little emotional as he looked at Ing Longtu. You've only officially started cultivating for half a year, right? Having already entered the intricate realm, this is already unprecedented in the recorded history of post-Great Calamity times. He smiled. My father's other records are hard to say, but the record of being the youngest martial scholar will definitely be broken by Longtu. Hearing his words, the other disciples all sucked in a breath of cold air, their gazes as they looked at Ing Longtu instead becoming much calmer. Yan Zhaoge smiled. It's still not over. Starting from cultivating qi into aura qi and breaking through into the martial scholar realm, Longtu will also have to put in a lot of effort in his cultivation afterwards. However, in the mid-inner aura martial scholar realm, washing the internal organs with aura qi, and in the early outer aura martial scholar realm, washing the marrows a second time. This should still be something that can be accomplished in a single stroke. Everyone smiled bitterly. When the lead was too great, it would instead cause others to not feel any jealousy, especially looking at Ing Longtu's ignorant and clueless manner. If they really wanted to get along with him, it actually wouldn't be hard. To be continued. P.S. Thanks to the 20,000 points of the Dragon Kong 66666 Alliance. Thanks also to those friends who have gifted this book, subscribed to this book, and voted for this book. Thank you all. Chapter 206. Looking at the group of youths before him, Yan Zhaoge did not continue speaking. For some things, going too far was as bad as not going far enough. Letting them know more would instead dampen their enthusiasm and confidence. Upon reaching the martial scholar realm, apart from the mid-inner aura stage and the early outer aura stage, Ing Longtu's advantage in terms of the qi and blood of his fleshly body was still very obvious, but it was no longer as heaven-defying. After becoming a martial scholar, the advantage of Ing Longtu's physical body in terms of qi and blood was mainly reflected in actual combat. His daily cultivation speed was no longer as frightening. However, the Heavenly Dipper body, in addition to the dragon and elephant blood, also had the advantage of being quick-witted and sensitive. Outer aura martial scholar was an important juncture in breaking through to the Scientian martial scholar realm, cultivating one's astral energy into spirituality and comprehending the heavens and earth was much easier for Longtu than for ordinary people. At the same time, this advantage would have a profound effect on his future cultivation, including when he reached higher realms. Yan Zhaoge himself, through various fortuitous encounters and methods, unceasingly improved and strengthened his physique. As for Shi Tai, who had cultivated the diamond body to the extreme, his body was like a glazed diamond. His physical body's defensive power far surpassed that of ordinary martial artists. There were quite a few similar situations, but they were all acquired, unlike Ing Longtu, who relied on his natural talent. Looking at them, Yan Zhaoge said, "Good talent means that your starting point is high, but it cannot determine your final accomplishments. At the end of the day, you still have to rely on yourself." Lanta's thoughts are simple. He's focused on learning and training diligently. He doesn't need anyone else to worry about him. Everyone, on the other hand, must remain calm in such a situation. Yan Zhaoge said, mildly, "Don't be afraid of others being more talented than you. Only be afraid of those more talented than you working harder than you. Our starting point is already behind. If we don't put in more effort in the process of catching up, how can we catch up to those who are ahead?" Yan Zhaoge lightly clapped his hands. "Then we can only hope for the one in the lead to fall by themselves. This sort of thing that completely depends on luck, do you think it's reliable?" The younger generation disciples all grew vigilant, solemnly accepting his teachings. "Thank you for your pointers, senior apprentice brother Yan. We will cultivate diligently." Yan Zhaoge smiled slightly, swiveling his head to glance at Feng Yunsheng. As far as he knew, this was the model of a pursuer. Cultivation maniacs like Shi Tai and Fu Enshu were full of praise for it. Her talent had always been top-notch. Under his hard work, his cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. Even though it wasn't as eye-catching as Ing Longtu's, it still caused everyone to sigh in admiration. Feng Yunxing's expression was the same as usual as she smiled at the group of young disciples. Still, as she and Yan Zhaoge exchanged glances, they both sighed silently. While Yan Zhaoge's encouragement was not wrong, it would still be extremely difficult for the other youths to catch up to Ing Longtu. In this flourishing world of martial arts, a powerful individual's advantage was often not something that could be made up for with numbers. It was not just Broad Creed Mountain, the Sacred Sun Clan, and the other powers of the 6 great sacred grounds. Any power, whether first-rate, second-rate, or even lower, would do their utmost to groom their most outstanding descendants. The last resource. It was unavoidable that priority was given to the minority. Therefore, it was very easy to create a situation where the strong grew stronger. Yan Zhaoge knew even more information than Feng Yunsheng did. For example, as far as Yan Zhaoge knew, Broad Creed Mountain's Qilin spring baptism originally had 3 times remaining. After Yan Zhaoge and Feng Yunsheng had been baptized, there was currently only 1 left. There was at least an 80% chance that the Qilin spring baptism would fall on Ing Longtu. The pitiful Lu Wen, who had always been thinking about the Qilin spring baptism and was similarly of Broad Creed Mountain's direct lineage, was pitiful. His hopes were about to be completely dashed. Was this fair to Lu Wen? If he was stronger than Yan Zhaoge, Feng Yunsheng, and Ing Longtu, it would definitely be unfair. However, if he really displayed greater potential and ability than the 3 of them, other than Feng Yunsheng's unique situation, Lu Wen would most likely be able to squeeze out either Yan Zhaoge or Ing Longtu's chance. As Feng Zhuan's direct disciple, for such an important reward of the clan, even facing Yan Di's only son, Yan Zhaoge, Lu Wen would also be able to compete for it. Sadly, even not taking into account Feng Yunsheng's unique status as a maiden of extreme Yin, facing the 3 of them, Lu Wen also did not possess any advantage at all. Instead, he was at a disadvantage. Yan Zhaoge and Ing Longtu having popped up one after another, this consecutive blow to the others who were aiming for the Qilin spring baptism was too fierce. However, to Lu Wen, even without Ing Longtu, he still had to face Si Kongqing's competition. After stepping into the martial scholar realm, Sikong Qing's rate of improvement had been too shocking, her limelight and potential also vaguely overshadowing Lu Wen's. If not for Ing Longtu's sudden appearance, in this final Qilin spring baptism, Sikong Qing's chances might even be greater than Lu Wen's. It was just that Sikong Qing didn't seem to care much about this. Thinking about it sometimes, Yan Zhaoge also felt a little uncomfortable. While he had been defeated by Yan Zhaoge, it could not be said that Lu Wen had not worked hard in his cultivation, and his talent could not be said to not be outstanding. It was a pity that the new waves of the river surpassed the old, each more intense than the previous, causing Lu Wen to become a large tea table filled with cups. Everyone was outstanding, far surpassing the average person. However, resources and opportunities were still limited at the end of the day. Therefore, they could only choose even more outstanding people from amongst the outstanding. For the clan's long-term plans, the environment for the grooming of the younger generation had to be fair and just, but it definitely could not be done evenly. Good steel was used on the blade's edge. No matter which clan it was, the principle was the same. Sailing against the current, not advancing or falling back. Yan Zhaoge shook his head slightly, taking his leave of Feng, Yunsheng, Ing Longtu, and the others heading to a higher level. Currently, Yan Zhaoge was already able to enter and leave the third level of the martial repository as he pleased. Ever since the founding of Broad Creed Mountain, there had only been the exalted heaven shaker Zhan Dongge, and Yan Zhaoge's father Yin Di, who had obtained this privilege in the martial scholar realm. This was the greatest affirmation of a junior disciple's martial talent and ability, representing the clan's trust and expectations. From a certain perspective, not mentioning anything else, just this privilege alone had already set Yan Zhaoge apart from the other core, direct disciples of the same generation. What was worth mentioning was that as compared to her indifference towards the Qilin spring baptism, Sikong Qing was instead extremely envious of this reward that Yan Zhaoge had obtained. The girl, who had always been cold, showed a rare expression of envy. To Yan Zhaoge, he could slowly tour the third level and beyond. What drew his attention now was the fourth level of the martial repository. Yan Zhaoge sucked in a deep breath, ascending the stairs. From the third to the fourth level, Yan Zhaoge could clearly feel that he had passed through some sort of barrier. On the fourth level of the martial repository, there was an independent protective formation. And the one in charge of this formation was the old man before Yan Zhaoge, directly lying sideways on the floor, pretending to sleep. He was also the first seat elder of Broad Creed Mountain's martial repository. He had already heard from Yuan Zhengfeng earlier that Yan Zhaoge had obtained special permission. If it were anyone else swaggering up the building like this, he would have long since beaten them out. After Yan Zhaoge's feet had both landed on the fourth level of the martial repository, the old man opened his eyes, looking calmly at Yan Zhaoge. Yan Zhaoge smiled slightly, greeting him senior apprentice granduncle. Perhaps other disciples of the younger generation might not know, but Yan Zhaoge was clear on how extraordinary the old man before him was. That year, it was precisely this old man who had competed with his grand master Yuan Zhengfeng for the position of clan chief of that generation. To be continued. Chapter 207. When Yan Zhaoge had inadvertently chatted with his father, Yin Di had once mentioned that with his current cultivation base, there was only one person in Broad Creed Mountain other than his master Yuan Zhengfeng, whom he did not have absolute confidence in being able to defeat. This person was the present first seat elder of the Martial Repository Tower, Xian Dongping, who had competed with Yuan Zhengfeng for the position of sect leader back then. Of all the martial grandmasters under the heavens, other than Yuan Zhengfeng, there was only Xian Dongping, whom he currently had no confidence in. Ever since Xian Dongping had been defeated in the competition with Yuan Zhengfeng that year, he had always been cultivating in seclusion at Broad Creed Mountain, rarely appearing in public. As a result, there were already very few people of the current younger generation of the Eight Extremities world who knew of his existence. Even Broad Creed Mountain's own younger generation only knew that the first seat of the Martial Repository, Elder Exion, was a longtime elder of the clan of the same generation as the old chief and the two grand elders. However, very few of them truly knew what kind of figure this Elder Exion was. However, Yen Zhaoga's background, as well as the degree to which he was currently valued within the clan, allowed him to come into contact with a lot of information that his peers of the same generation did not. For example, currently, there were a total of 4 people in Broad Creed Mountain who were proficient in all 8 of the 8 extreme arts, including his own father, Yen Di. Other than Yen Di, the other 3 were the number 1 expert of Broad Creed Mountain, the old clan chief Yuan Zhengfeng, Yen Zhaoga's second apprentice uncle Fang Juan, and Exion Dongping, who was currently before him, of Broad Creed Mountain's 3 supreme martial arts. Fang Juan cultivated in the limitless heavenly sword, Yen Di cultivated in the immeasurable heavenly saber, trying to create a martial art that was more suitable for him, while Yuan Zhengfeng cultivated in the heavenly broad creed palm and the immeasurable heavenly saber, and Exion Dongping was the only one other than Yuan Zhengfeng who was proficient in 2 of Broad Creed Mountain's supreme martial arts. Cultivating in more martial arts didn't mean that one's combat prowess would be higher, but cultivating in all 3 of Broad Creed Mountain's supreme martial arts wasn't easy. For Exion Dongping to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Yuan Zhengfeng, it was enough to show how extraordinary he was. Although they wouldn't admit it verbally, the other sacred grounds, the Sacred Sun clan included, had all agreed to it. They all privately acknowledged that Broad Creed Mountain was the strongest of the 8 extremities world in terms of martial grandmasters. The younger generation didn't know of Exion Dongping, but the older generation wouldn't forget that Broad Creed Mountain still had such a figure, although it was rumored that Exion Dongping lost in the competition against Yuan Zhengfeng. As a result, his spirit was damaged, leaving behind a barrier in his heart. Like Yuan Zhengfeng, it was difficult for him to break through to the martial sage realm. But at the martial grandmaster realm, Exion Dongping's strength still possessed deterrence that was not much weaker than Yuan Zhengfeng's. Exion Dongping was still lying sideways on the 4th floor of the martial repository, not getting up. However, his eyes were very seriously appraising Yen Zhaoga. After a long while, he nodded slowly and did not say much. He asked directly, "Are you going to choose one of the 3 great absolute techniques now, or wait until you become a great grandmaster?" Imparting the second half of the clear chi profound art to Yen Zhaoga was already something that was already set in stone. It was also certain that Yen Zhaoga would be allowed to cultivate in the 3 supreme martial arts. The only problem was that it would be sooner or later. "I want to try it now." Yen Zhaoga smiled, answering, "I choose the heavenly broad creed palm." Exion Dongping didn't probe further, directly nodding his head, pointing upwards. The roof of the 4th floor of the Library of Martial Repository immediately lit up. In the light, 4 phantoms appeared. One was in the middle, while the other 3 were arranged in a triangular formation. Looking carefully, Yen Zhaoga saw that the phantoms in the middle was actually a scroll. That was the second half of Broad Creed Mountain's orthodox, direct, lineage, clear chi profound art. Around the scroll hovered 3 things. They were respectively a saber, a sword, and a seal plate. When Yen Zhaoga's gaze came into contact with that saber, before his eyes seemed to appear a domineering, heroic man, mighty beyond compare, his aura majestic as the heavens. The exalted Hantian, Zhan Dongga, Broad Creed Mountain's lineage, the number 1 expert in history since the founding of the mountain, and also the number 1 expert of the 8 extremities world after the Great Calamity. What caused countless people to feel pity was that such a Jean Donga actually still had immense room for growth. If he hadn't died early, no one knew what heights he would have been able to reach. It was precisely when Jean Donga had been the chief that Broad Creed Mountain had reached its golden age in history. Before Jean Donga, Broad Creed Mountain had actually only had the supreme martial art of their founder, the heavenly Broad Creed Palm. Afterwards, Jean Donga had created the immeasurable heavenly saber, adding another supreme martial art to Broad Creed Mountain's lineage. Yen Zhaoga gazed to the side. As his gaze came into contact with that sword, the scene before him changed as the figure of another person appeared. This person's appearance was somewhat similar to Jean Donga's, but his aura was calm, as if the great earth could bear all things. Jean Donga's younger brother, the heaven diviner, Jean Shilo, the chief of Broad Creed Mountain after Jean Donga, after experiencing their first great battle with the Flame Devil World, when Broad Creed Mountain had suffered a great blow to its vitality, falling from its peak to its lowest point. It had been this calm and serene-looking man who had led Broad Creed Mountain through its darkest years, ushering in the dawn of its rise once more. Afterwards, like his brother, Jean Shilo had perished in yet another great battle with the Flame Devils, dying a heroic death in battle. Other than his personality, Jean Shilo's martial arts were also different from his brother Jean Donga's, opening up a new path for Broad Creed Mountain. The limitless heavenly sword, along with the heavenly Broad Creed Palm and the immeasurable heavenly saber, were known as Broad Creed Mountain's three supreme martial arts. At the same time, along with the other three sword arts, they were known as the four-peak sword arts of the Eight Extremities world. The Exalted Heaven Shaker and the Heaven Diviner, as the most legendary twin brothers of the Eight Extremities world of post-Great Calamity times, had left a deep and lasting impact on Broad Creed Mountain's history. Not only was this reflected in all that they had done while they were still alive, the light they left behind after their deaths was also not extinguished for a long time. Looking at the flare of the ancients, Yen Zhaoga also felt very emotional. However, Yen Zhaoga had long since had a plan in mind for choosing a supreme martial art today. Not choosing the immeasurable heavenly saber or the limitless heavenly sword, his target being Broad Creed Mountain's most ancient supreme martial art, the heavenly Broad Creed Palm. That's right, the most ancient supreme martial art. The foundation of Broad Creed Mountain's martial arts was the clear chi profound art and the heavenly Broad Creed Palm, one internal and one external, complementing each other. The other martial arts, including the eight extreme arts, had all been derived from this foundation. Being ancient was not the reason why Yen Zhaoga had chosen the heavenly Broad Creed Palm. What truly interested Yen Zhaoga was that the heavenly Broad Creed Palm had some hints of the jade clear lineage of before the Great Calamity. Meanwhile, the clear chi profound art was somewhat related to the clear chi lineage of before the Great Calamity, the founder of Broad Creed Mountain. The heaven-establishing old man Chiu Yuan had excavated the legacies of the Great Calamity, analyzing and developing them on this foundation, finally forming the earliest martial legacies of Broad Creed Mountain. It was just that what left Yen Zhaoga rather speechless was that the heaven-establishing old man Chiu Yuan had actually combined a bit of the scattered legacies of the clear chi lineage and the clear jade lineage. However, this was currently not the main point. The main point was that while the legacies of the clear chi and clear jade lineages that Chiu Yuan had excavated were only scattered bits of them, Yen Zhaoga was 70 to 80% certain that they were of the direct lineage. This caused Yen Zhaoga to be extremely interested. This was because before the Great Calamity, such legacies had only existed in the Divine Palace. The peerless heavenly scripture that Yen Zhaoga cultivated and had originated from the clear jade lineage. Yen Zhaoga's gaze fell on that scroll and that seal. While it was only a silhouette, he could still feel a bit of ancientness from it. During the Great Calamity that year, if I am not wrong, it actually did not affect the entire heavens and earth at the same time. Instead, it was the divine palace that bore the brunt of it. A dim light flickered within Yan Zhaoge's eyes. To be continued. P.S. Thank you to fellow reader Blacklord for your 10,000 coins. I also thank those friends who have gifted this book, voted for this book, subscribed to this book, and recommended this book. Thank you all.